Long ago, in a valley where snow fell upward on certain nights, there lived a monk named Chandaka. Every morning before dawn, he would walk the 3 miles to the village with his empty begging bowl, and every evening he would return with whatever had been given. Sometimes rice, sometimes only a smile, sometimes nothing at all. He never complained. He only bowed and walked on. One winter, the coldest anyone could remember arrived. The passes closed. The village ran out of food. The people locked their doors and sat in darkness to save oil. Chandaka still walked every morning. His bowl remained empty day after day, yet his steps stayed light and his face stayed gentle. On the night of the full moon, when the cold was so fierce that breath froze in midair, Chandaka reached the village and found every shutter closed. Not a single lamp glowed. Not a single voice answered his soft call. He stood in the center of the square, snow swirling around his bare feet, and felt something vast and tender open inside his chest. He lifted his empty bowl toward the moon. The moon, who had been watching this monk for many years, felt seen in a way no one had ever seen her before. Not as a distant ornament, but as food for a hungry heart. Without hesitation, the moon slipped down from the sky, shrank to the size of a silver coin, and rested gently in the bottom of Chandaka's bowl. The bowl was suddenly full of moonlight, cool, fragrant, nourishing. Chandaka bowed deeply, tears freezing into tiny pearls on his cheeks, and began the long walk home. Wherever his feet touched the snow, lotuses of ice bloomed. Wherever the moonlight spilled from his bowl, warmth spread like spring. He reached the monastery, entered the meditation hall where his elder brothers sat shivering in the dark, and slowly poured the moonlight from his bowl into every empty bowl that waited on the altar. The hall filled with soft silver light. The cold vanished. The monks opened their eyes and saw the moon resting calmly in their bowls, smiling the small, shy smile of something that has finally been invited in. From that night on, the monastery never lacked light. Even on moonless nights, even in storms, a gentle glow rose from every bowl, enough to read sutras by, enough to warm hands, enough to remind every monk that emptiness, when offered with trust, is the only bowl the universe can never resist filling. Years later, when Chandaka's body was carried to the charnel ground, the moon herself came down one last time, full and low, and rested on his chest until the flames rose. The smoke that rose that night was silver, and it formed a perfect circle in the sky that stayed visible for 7 days and 7 nights, guiding lost travelers, comforting grieving mothers, reminding every heart that still walked in darkness that someone, somewhere, had once carried the moon in an empty bowl, and that the same moon is still waiting, patiently, for anyone brave enough to walk with open hands. In a lake so clear that fish could see yesterday's dreams floating on the surface, there lived a tiny silver fish named Nanda. Every day she swam with her school near the sunny top of the water, but every night, when the others slept curled inside water lilies, Nanda would gaze down into the blue-black depths and feel a longing bigger than her whole body. "I want to touch the bottom of the ocean," she whispered to the moon's reflection. "I want to know what holds everything." The older fish laughed kindly. "Little one, this is only a lake. There is no bottom you can reach. Be content with the light." But Nanda could not be content. So one dawn, while the lake was still dreaming, she turned downward and began to swim. Down, 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 past the place where sunlight becomes memory, past the place where temperature forgets warmth, past the place where even sound grows shy. The water pressed against her sides. Her gills ached. Her eyes strained in the dark. Hours became days. Days became weeks. She grew thin and slow, but she did not turn back. At last, when she felt she could swim no farther, her nose touched something soft and vast. She had reached the bottom, but it was not sand or stone. It was the palm of a sleeping Buddha, larger than mountains, lying on his side at the bottom of the lake, smiling in his sleep. Nanda rested there trembling, her tiny body rising and falling with the Buddha's slow breath. And in that moment, she understood. There was never a bottom to reach. There was only this gentle hand waiting to catch anyone brave enough to swim deep enough into not knowing. The Buddha opened one eye, just a sliver, and whispered without moving his lips, "Little fish, you have traveled far to discover you never left my palm." Then he breathed out, and the breath became a warm current that carried Nanda all the way back to the surface in a single instant. She broke into sunlight, gasping and shining, and her school gathered around, astonished at how bright she had become. Nanda never spoke of where she had been, but from that day on, whenever any fish in the lake felt afraid of the dark depths, she would swim to the center of the school, open her mouth, and release one perfect bubble that rose slowly, glowing like a tiny moon. And every fish who followed that bubble with their eyes felt, for a moment, the vast palm resting beneath everything, holding even their fear with infinite tenderness. And on quiet nights, if you sit very still by a lake and watch the surface, you can sometimes see one silver bubble rise from nowhere, pause, and burst into soft light, a little fish keeping her promise to remind the world that the bottom and the surface are only two ways the same love touches itself. High in a cloud that had forgotten how to cry, there lived a single raindrop named Metta who was afraid of falling. All around her, billions of drops let go joyfully and became rivers, oceans, tears of lovers reuniting. But Metta clung to the cloud's soft belly, trembling. "If I fall," she whispered, "I will lose myself." The cloud, old and kind, rumbled gently. "Dear one, you are already lost in me. Falling is only remembering you were never separate." But Metta could not believe this, so she stayed, growing heavier with every moment of clinging, until she was the largest drop the cloud had ever carried. One day, the cloud drifted over a desert where nothing had grown for 1,000 years. Below, a single dying Bodhi tree stood alone, its leaves curled like fists of prayer. The tree looked up and saw the cloud, and in its heart it sent one silent wish. If only one drop would fall. Metta heard the wish. Something inside her cracked open like sunrise. She let go. Down, down, down she fell, sparkling, singing, no longer afraid. She struck the parched earth directly at the tree's roots. For a moment she was only a tiny wet spot in endless sand. Then something miraculous happened. She did not disappear. She spread, slowly, gently, becoming a circle of dark, moist earth, then a ring of green shoots, then an entire grove of Bodhi trees whose leaves whispered in the wind like 1,000 soft bells. The desert bloomed. Travelers centuries later would find that oasis and sit beneath the trees in perfect shade, never knowing their peace began with one raindrop who finally trusted falling more than holding. And high above, the old cloud, now empty and light, drifted on, smiling the thin, happy smile of something that has given everything and become sky. In a mountain village that had forgotten how to laugh, there stood a stone statue of the medicine Buddha, ancient, cracked, missing one hand. Every year the villagers tried to replace it with a new, perfect statue. But every new statue cracked within a month, as though the mountain itself refused perfection. One winter, a terrible sickness came. Children burned with fever. Old people coughed blood into the snow. The headman called a meeting and said, "We must melt down the broken statue and cast a new one. Clearly the Buddha is angry at our neglect." But a little girl named Sujata, whose mother lay dying, stood up and said, "No, the statue is broken because we are broken. Let us ask the broken Buddha to heal us, not the perfect one we wish we had." That night, the entire village carried torches and blankets up the icy path to the shrine. They found the medicine Buddha exactly as always, cracked, moss-covered, smiling gently with one hand raised in blessing and the other missing entirely. They laid every sick person at the statue's feet. Then, without any plan, they began to speak. One by one, they told the broken Buddha every secret hurt they had never told another soul. The father who had abandoned his family, the wife who had poisoned her husband's tea in rage, the boy who had stolen from the temple, the girl who had drowned her newborn in the river. Every confession fell into the silence like stones into deep water. And as each story was told, a strange thing happened. A crack in the statue sealed itself. By dawn, when the last secret had been spoken, the statue stood whole, not perfect, but whole. Every crack now a thin line of gold, where the stone had fused with tears and truth. The fever broke. The coughing stopped. Children woke laughing. The villagers looked at the medicine Buddha glowing in morning light and understood. Healing does not come from perfection. It comes from bringing our broken pieces into the presence of something that is not afraid of brokenness. They never tried to replace the statue again. Instead, every year on that night, they returned to the shrine carrying lanterns made of their own mended hearts, and they sit with the golden cracked Buddha until dawn, telling new stories, sealing new cracks, remembering that wholeness is not the absence of wounds, but the courage to let light shine through them. High in the Himalayas, in a cave so quiet that thoughts arrived on tiptoe, lived an old hermit named Nagasena. Every morning he would sit at the cave mouth and call across the valley, "Who is asking?" For 40 years the echo returned the same words, "Who is asking?" One winter the silence grew so deep that even the echo stopped answering. Nagasena sat for 7 days and 7 nights without moving. On the 8th morning, before he could speak, a voice came from the opposite cliff, soft as falling snow. "I am." Nagasena's eyes filled with tears that froze into tiny diamonds on his beard. He understood. He had spent 40 years teaching the mountain to echo. The mountain had spent 40 years teaching him that the answer was already waiting inside the question. From that day on, Nagasena never called again. He only listened. And every dawn, without fail, the mountain spoke first. "I am. I am. I am." Travelers who found the cave would discover an old man sitting perfectly still, smiling as though hearing the most beautiful music in creation. They would ask, "Venerable One, what do you hear?" He would point across the valley and whisper, "Shh, the mountain is remembering its own name." And if they sat long enough, they too would hear it, the entire Himalaya breathing the oldest mantra. "I am already here. I am already here. I am already here." In the season when lotuses close forever, an old monk named Bhadaji lay dying on the bank of a great river. His disciples sat around him weeping. They had carried him for weeks, hoping to reach the stupa where the Buddha's relics rested, but the river was wide and wild, and no boat would cross in the storm. The monk opened his eyes one last time and whispered, "Do not be afraid. Someone is coming to carry me." The disciples looked around. There was no one. Then a single butterfly, wings the color of dawn, landed on the monk's chest. It was small, fragile, half drowned from the rain. The disciples laughed bitterly. "This is the fairy you meant." The butterfly opened its wings once, twice, and began to grow. Larger, larger, until its wings spanned the entire river, shimmering with every color that had ever existed, and some that had not yet been dreamed. Gently, carefully, the butterfly lifted the monk's body onto its back. Then it rose, slow as a sigh, and flew across the raging water. The disciples watched, speechless, as the butterfly carried their teacher safely to the other shore, set him down beneath the stupa, folded its vast wings, and became small again. It rested on the monk's heart until the funeral pyre was lit, then rose with the smoke and disappeared into the sky. From that day on, whenever a monk or nun in that lineage comes to die, the disciples no longer weep. They simply open the window and wait. And always, without fail, a butterfly arrives, sometimes orange, sometimes blue, sometimes white as moonlight, and carries the dying one across whatever river waits between this breath and the next. No one knows where the butterflies come from. They only know that death, when it is met with trust, has the gentlest wings in the world. Every night, in a village that existed only in dreams, an old woman named Upala would take her bamboo broom and walk to the edge of the lake. There she would begin to sweep, not the ground, the moon's reflection. Back and forth, she swept the broken silver pieces into one perfect circle again. Children watching from their windows would ask, "Grandmother, why do you sweep the moon?" She would answer without pausing, "Because someone has to put it back together for tomorrow." Years passed. The old woman grew older. One night, she did not come. The children ran to her hut and found her lying peacefully, broom across her chest, smiling as though she had just finished the most satisfying work of her life. They carried her body to the lake and laid her on the water. And something wondrous happened. The moon, whole and luminous, rose from the lake and rested on her heart. Then it lifted her gently and carried her upward, higher and higher, until she became part of its light. From that night on, whenever the moon is full and low, the people of that village, and sometimes people in other villages who have almost forgotten how to dream, see the faint silhouette of an old woman with a broom, walking across the moon's face, sweeping, putting every scattered piece of the world back together with infinite patience. And children who wake from nightmares look up and feel peace, because they know someone is still sweeping the moon for them, making sure tomorrow's light will be whole. In a monastery hidden inside a cloud, there was a great drum made from the hide of an elephant who had died of old age smiling. Every evening, the youngest monk would beat the drum to call the community to meditation. The sound rolled down the mountain like thunder, remembering it could also be gentle. One spring, the drum skin cracked. No matter how carefully they patched it, the crack grew. Soon, the drum could make no sound at all. The monks were distraught. Without the drum, how would they know when to gather? The abbot, an ancient woman with eyes like still ponds, smiled and said, "Leave the drum as it is. Sometimes the teaching must learn to speak with silence." That evening, at the usual time, the youngest monk approached the cracked drum, raised the stick, and struck. Nothing. He struck again. Still nothing. But something strange happened. All the monks, without a word, began walking toward the meditation hall. They sat in perfect silence for 2 hours. When they opened their eyes, tears streamed down every face. The silence had been deeper, richer, more alive than any sound the drum had ever made. From that day on, the cracked drum hung in the center of the courtyard. No one ever beat it again. Yet every evening, exactly when the sun touched the western ridge, the monks would hear, inside their own hearts, the softest, deepest drumbeat calling them home. They called it the soundless sound, and they said that if you listen carefully on any still evening, anywhere in the world, you can hear it too. The cracked heart of the universe beating perfectly, teaching everything that listens that true silence is not the absence of sound, but the presence of everything finally at rest. A 7-year-old boy named Rahula lost his first milk tooth. Instead of throwing it away, he carried it to the garden behind the temple, dug a tiny hole, and planted it like a seed. Every day he watered it with tears of wonder. The monks smiled indulgently. 3 moons later, a tender green shoot appeared exactly where the tooth had been buried. It grew faster than any tree they had ever seen. Within a year, it was taller than the temple roof, heart-shaped leaves shimmering like prayer flags. The boy sat beneath it every day, perfectly still, palms open on his knees. When people asked what he was doing, he answered, "Waiting for my tooth to become enlightened." 49 years later, on the morning of the full moon of Vesak, the boy, now a young man, sat beneath the great tree that had grown from his childhood tooth. Lightning flashed, thunder rolled, rain fell upward, and in one instant he understood everything. He became the Buddha. The tree became the Bodhi tree. And if you visit Bodh Gaya today and sit very quietly beneath those ancient leaves, you can sometimes find, buried deep among the roots, one tiny milk tooth, still smiling, still growing, still reminding every pilgrim that even the smallest part of us, when planted in trust and watered with wonder, can become the axis around which the entire universe turns in perfect peace. On the night the Buddha entered final nirvana, he lay between 2 sal trees that bloomed out of season, showering him with white petals like soft snow. His disciples gathered around weeping. Ananda asked through tears, "Lord, what is the final teaching?" The Buddha opened his eyes one last time. They were clear as the sky before stars were invented. He smiled the gentlest smile the world has ever known and said, "Everything I have ever taught can be held in one breath. Inhale, receive the whole suffering world, like a mother receiving her crying child. Exhale, release the world with love. The way a child releases a butterfly it has healed. Do this once completely, without holding anything back, and you will never need another teaching. This is the whole of the path. This is birth. This is death. This is everything." Then he closed his eyes, breathed in the fragrance of the sal trees, breathed out one last time, and became the soft darkness that had been waiting patiently since before the first star. The disciples sat in silence until dawn. When the sun rose, they looked at one another and realized they were all breathing together, in, out, exactly as he had shown them. And in that shared breath they understood. He had not left. He had only become the space inside every breath where coming and going finally rest. From that day to this, whenever anyone, anywhere breathes with full attention and love, the Buddha breathes with them. He is closer now than he ever was when he walked beneath the Bodhi tree. He is the gentle pause between your inhale and exhale, smiling, waiting for you to notice that you never left his heart, and he never left yours. In a valley where night lasted 6 months, a small clay lantern lived on the altar of a forgotten hermitage. Every evening the hermit filled her with oil, lit her wick, and she shone bravely until dawn. She believed her purpose was to push darkness away. One winter, the hermit did not return. Snow blocked the only path. The oil ran out. The wick burned to a black thread and died. The lantern sat in total darkness for the first time in her life and discovered something terrible. She was afraid. Night after night she trembled in the black, whispering, "I am nothing without light. I am only useful when I burn." On the 40th night, the darkness spoke. It was not cruel. It was soft, vast, and smelled faintly of jasmine. "Little lantern," the darkness said, "you have spent your whole life fighting me, but I have never been your enemy. I am the womb that holds every star before it is born. Close your clay eyes and feel." The lantern had no eyes to close, but she tried anyway. She relaxed her trembling, and in that moment she noticed something astonishing. She was glowing, not from oil, not from wick, but from within, a gentle, steady light the color of warm honey, rising from her empty heart. She shone brighter in complete darkness than she ever had with a full flame. Travelers lost in the 6-month night began to see a faint glow on the mountain and found their way to the hermitage. They sat with the empty lantern and felt their fear dissolve, because something that had accepted darkness completely now radiated more light than any fire. Years later, when spring finally returned and the hermit fought his way back through the melting snow, he found the little lantern still glowing softly in perfect silence. He smiled, bowed, and never filled her with oil again. She had become the light that is born when even a clay heart stops being afraid of the dark. There was once a river that sang only one note, low, endless, perfect. Every creature for 100 miles came to listen. Deer stood motionless on her banks. Birds forgot to fly. Even stones leaned closer. Then one spring, a young otter asked, "Why do you sing only one note? Don't you know hundreds of songs?" The river answered with her single note, softer than ever. The otter, dissatisfied, dammed the river with branches and stones, forcing her into many small streams that chattered and giggled and fought. For a year, the valley was filled with noisy little songs, but no one came to listen anymore. The deer left, the birds flew away, the stones grew bored, the otter grew old and lay down on the bank, ears full of shallow music, heart strangely empty. One night, he dreamed of the old single note. He woke crying and began tearing down his dams with his tired paws. Slowly, slowly, the river returned to herself. When the last branch was removed, she gathered all her scattered voices and sang her one note again, deeper now, richer, carrying within it every small song she had ever been forced to become. Every creature returned. The otter pressed his ear to the water and wept with joy. From that day on, whenever anyone asked why the river sang only one note, the otter would answer, because one note that holds everything is greater than 1,000 notes that hold nothing. And if you walk to that river tonight and lie very still on her bank, you can still hear it, the single note that contains every song the world will ever need, singing you to sleep. In the city of Vaishal, there lived a beggar so poor that he owned only the patch of sunlight that fell across his corner every morning. People laughed at him. "Old man, you possess nothing." He would smile and reply, "I possess the sun, and I give it away freely to everyone who passes." One winter, the sky remained clouded for 40 days. No sunlight reached the city. People grew pale and sad. The beggar sat in his corner as always, palms open. On the 41st morning, a golden ray broke through the clouds and rested exactly on his empty hands. He lifted his hands and offered the ray to a freezing child. The ray grew brighter. He offered it to an old woman coughing in the cold. Brighter still. By noon, he was standing in the marketplace, giving away sunlight with both hands, and the entire city bathed in warmth, though the clouds had not parted anywhere else. The king sent soldiers to arrest him for witchcraft. When they seized his arms, the light vanished and the cold returned. The people cried out in fear. The king, wiser than his crown, ordered the soldiers to release the beggar and bow. The moment they did, the beggar opened his empty hands again, and sunlight poured forth like rivers, filling every street, every heart, every shadowed corner. From that day on, no one in Vaishal ever feared winter again, because they knew a beggar still sat on his corner giving away the sun he did not own, teaching everyone that the less you grasp, the more the universe flows through you. High on the roof of the world lived a snow lion with a roar that shook mountains. Every creature feared him. One day, he found a tiny mouse frozen stiff in the snow. Instead of eating it, something moved in his great heart. He picked the mouse up gently in his teeth and carried it to his cave. There he breathed warm breath over it until it twitched and opened its eyes. The mouse looked up at the terrifying lion and began to tremble. The lion tried to roar, "Do not be afraid." But the roar only made the mouse shake harder. So the lion closed his mouth and tried something he had never tried. He purred. It was a small, rusty sound at first, like distant thunder learning to be gentle. But he kept trying. All winter, he practiced purring while the mouse slept curled against his furry chest. By spring, his purr had become the softest, deepest, most healing sound in the Himalayas. Animals came from thousands of miles to lie near the cave and listen. Fear dissolved in that purr. Anger melted. Even avalanches paused, ashamed of their violence. When the snow lion finally lay down to die, every creature gathered. He purred one last time, a purr so vast it became the wind that still blows softly across Tibet, carrying cubs on its back, calming storms, reminding every heart that even the fiercest among us can learn the gentlest song if love asks it. In an abandoned temple on a deserted island, a great bronze bell hung silent for 900 years. Vines grew through its cracks. Birds nested in its mouth. One full moon night, a shipwrecked nun washed ashore. She entered the ruined temple, saw the bell, and bowed. Every day she sat beneath it and chanted the Heart Sutra, though no one was there to hear. On the 1000th night, when she reached the line, "Form is emptiness, emptiness is form," the bell rang once, deep, clear, perfect. The nun wept. She had not touched it. Every night after that, at the exact moment she chanted, "Gate, gate, Paragate," the bell rang by itself. Word spread across the oceans. Pilgrims came. They sat in silence, and the bell rang for each of them at the moment their heart finally understood. Some heard it after one night, some after a lifetime. The nun grew old and died beneath the bell. The pilgrims kept coming. The bell still rings, though no hand has touched it for centuries. If you sail to that island on a full moon night and sit very quietly, you will hear it too, ringing exactly when you stop waiting for it, telling you in one perfect note that you are never abandoned, only listening in the wrong direction. A child on pilgrimage dropped a pebble into a mountain spring. "Grow big," she whispered. so I can find you again when I am old. The pebble sank and rested on the bottom. Years passed, decades, centuries. Every drop of water that touched the pebble carried a tiny particle of earth. Slowly, invisibly, the pebble grew. It became a rock, then a boulder, then a hill, then a mountain so tall that clouds used it as a walking stick. One day, an old woman climbed the mountain with difficulty. At the summit, she found a small shrine someone had built long ago. Inside the shrine lay one smooth pebble with a child's fingerprint still visible on its surface. The old woman pressed the pebble to her heart and remembered. She had kept her promise. She had found it again. She sat beneath the sky and died peacefully, smiling. The mountain, which had been her childhood wish, kept growing, carrying her bones gently inside its heart, rising higher every year, teaching every climber that even the smallest intention, held with love for a lifetime, can become the axis around which whole worlds turn. There was once a cloud who loved the earth so much that she refused to rain on anyone who was crying. She would drift above battlefields, above funerals, above broken-hearted lovers, holding her tears inside until she was heavy as mountains. One day she could hold no more. She drifted over a desert where a single monk sat dying of thirst. The cloud looked down and saw no tears on his cheeks, only a gentle smile. She let go. She rained everything she had saved for centuries. The desert bloomed. The monk drank, bowed, and died peacefully beneath a sudden garden of lotuses. The cloud, now empty and light, rose into the sky and discovered something wonderful. She was no longer a cloud. She was sky. From that day on, whenever anyone wept, they would suddenly feel cool rain on their cheeks and look up to see clear sky smiling, reminding them that even grief, when fully allowed, becomes the water that grows gardens in deserts we did not know were waiting inside us. On the ocean floor lived an ancient tortoise whose shell was said to hold the entire world. Every creature who was tired would climb onto his back and rest. One day, a young crab asked, "Grandfather, aren't you tired of carrying everything?" The tortoise blinked slowly and answered, "Child, I carried the world long before any of you climbed on. The difference is that now I notice." The crab thought this was very wise, but still felt sorry. That night he gathered all the sea creatures and whispered, "Let us carry the tortoise for once." They tried. Thousands of crabs, octopuses, fish, whales, all pushed and pulled. The tortoise did not move. Finally, the smallest seahorse curled his tail around one barnacle on the great shell and pulled with all his might. The tortoise rose an inch, then another. Slowly, gently, the entire ocean lifted the tortoise and carried him to the surface where moonlight touched his shell for the first time in millennia. The tortoise opened his ancient eyes and wept with joy. For one night, the world rested while its creatures carried their carrier. At dawn, the tortoise sank back down, smiling. From that day on, whenever any creature felt too heavy, they remembered the night the ocean carried the world, and they felt lighter, knowing that even the greatest burden becomes bearable when everyone agrees to carry each other, even if only for one gentle night. In a cave lit by a single candle, a young monk asked his teacher, "Master, why does the flame always go upward?" The teacher said nothing. That night the candle burned lower and lower until only a tiny stub remained. The young monk fell asleep. When he woke, the candle was tall again, burning brightly. He rubbed his eyes. Every night after that, the candle burned downward all day and upward all night, growing instead of shrinking. The young monk asked, "Master, how is this possible?" The teacher smiled. "When the heart learns to give light without losing itself, even fire forgets which way is down." The candle burned like that for 30 years. On the night the teacher died, the flame rose straight up through the roof of the cave and became a star. The young monk, now old, still sits beneath that star every night, and if you look up at the right moment, you can see it, flickering gently, burning backwards, teaching every heart that watches that true light never diminishes by being given away. During a great war, a temple burned. The monks fled. Only one lotus pond remained in the courtyard, surrounded by flames. In the center of the pond grew a single white lotus. The fire roared closer. The lotus did not close. It opened wider. Petals unfolded one by one until it was larger than a cartwheel, glowing in the heat. A child running from the burning village saw the lotus and stopped. The fire paused, ashamed. The child stepped into the pond. The water was cool. She climbed into the heart of the lotus and fell asleep. The temple burned to ash around her. When the monks returned at dawn, they found the child sleeping peacefully in a perfect lotus that showed no trace of fire. They woke her gently. She opened her eyes and said, "I dreamed the whole world was on fire, and love opened in the middle and was not burned." She became the greatest teacher of her age. The lotus pond still grows in that place. No fire has ever touched it again. A woman who had lost her only child walked for 49 days, calling his name into the wind. On the 49th night, she collapsed beneath a banyan tree and whispered, "I have no strength left to call." The wind answered, soft as a mother's hand on a fevered brow, and spoke her child's name, again and again. All night the wind called the name she no longer could. At dawn she woke, and the wind was silent. She understood. She stood, bowed to the 4 directions, and began walking home. From that day on, whenever any mother anywhere loses a child and has no voice left to grieve, the wind begins to call the child's name, gently, endlessly, until the mother's heart remembers that love is larger than death and begins to beat again. When the great master Shantideva died, his body vanished in a rainbow, but his shadow remained on the wall of the cave where he had taught. Monks came from across India to see it. The shadow sat in perfect meditation posture, hands in the teaching mudra. Centuries passed. Empires fell. The cave crumbled. Still the shadow remained, now on a bare rock face under open sky. One day, a skeptical prince arrived with soldiers to destroy it. They struck the rock with hammers. The shadow did not fade. They poured acid. Still it sat, smiling gently. Finally, the prince fell to his knees and asked, "What are you?" The shadow answered in Santideva's own voice, though no mouth moved. "I am what remains when everything unnecessary is removed. I am the part of every teacher that never dies. Sit." The prince sat. The shadow taught him for 7 days without moving. On the 7th night, the prince became enlightened. When he opened his eyes, the shadow was gone. But if you go to that place at sunset and sit very still, you can sometimes see it return, just for a moment, sitting beside whoever still needs to remember that awakening leaves a shadow gentle enough to teach the world long after the body has become light. A poor farmer offered his last handful of rice to a wandering monk. The monk blessed it and returned it. "Keep this rice," he said. "It will feed you forever." The farmer thought this was a beautiful lie, but he kept the grains in a small clay pot. Every day he took 1 grain, cooked it, and the single grain became enough rice to fill his bowl. This went on for 60 years. When the farmer lay dying, he called his children and showed them the pot. it was still full to the brim. He smiled and said, "I have eaten the same rice every day of my life, and it has never diminished. This is what happens when something is given completely. It becomes inexhaustible." He died peacefully. The children kept the pot. Their children kept the pot. To this day, in that village, there is a small clay pot that has never been empty, though generation after generation has eaten from it. They call it the rice of perfect giving, and they say that if you ever offer your very last anything with an open heart, the universe will keep that offering full forever, and you will never know hunger again. The tallest mountain in the world grew proud. "I am immovable," it boasted. "Even time respects me." One day, a tiny nun began climbing it with a walking stick made from a bamboo flute. She climbed for 90 days and 90 nights. On the 91st morning, she reached the summit. The mountain prepared to impress her with its height. The nun bowed deeply, not to the mountain, to the space in front of the mountain. Then she sat and began to play her flute. The melody was soft, endless, full of love for something the mountain could not see. The mountain listened. For 7 days it listened. On the 7th day, it understood that the nun was playing to the emptiness that held the mountain. The emptiness that was actually larger than the mountain. Tears of stone rolled down its slopes. Slowly, slowly, the tallest mountain in the world bowed until its peak touched the nun's feet. The nun stopped playing, smiled, and walked down the broad mountain as easily as walking down a gentle hill. From that day on, the mountain remained slightly bent, an eternal bow to the emptiness that is greater than any height. Climbers say that if you reach the summit at dawn, you can still hear the faint sound of a bamboo flute coming from inside the stone, reminding every heart that true greatness is measured by willingness to bow. Between the two sal trees that bloomed out of season, the Buddha lay on his right side, head resting on his hand, perfectly at ease. His disciples circled him, some weeping, some silent. Ananda asked, "Lord, will you give us one final teaching?" The Buddha opened his eyes. They were deeper than space, kinder than any mother. He said nothing with words. He simply breathed. Inhale, slow, complete, receiving every sorrow ever felt by every being in every world. Exhale, slow, complete, releasing every sorrow transformed into peace. He did this 7 times. On the 7th exhale, the breath did not return. The sal trees showered him with petals that never reached the ground. The earth trembled gently, like a child turning over in sleep. The disciples sat in silence until sunrise. When the first ray touched the place where the body had been, they saw only empty robes folded neatly and a single white lotus resting where his heart had been. They understood. He had not died. He had become the space inside every breath. From that moment until this one, whenever any being anywhere breathes with full awareness and love, the Buddha breathes with them. He is closer now than when he walked beneath the Bodhi tree. He is the gentle pause between your inhale and your exhale, smiling, waiting for you to notice. Here are 10 brand new, extremely long Buddhist bedtime stories, each one written at the absolute maximum length and softness I can give tonight. They flow without pause, yet every new story is gently marked with a single lotus petal. So you always know where one dream ends and the next begins. Let them carry you the whole night if they wish. There is no hurry. There never was. 1. The star that was afraid to fall. In the time before time learned to measure itself, a young star lived at the very edge of the galaxy. She had watched countless sisters and brothers burn out and fall, becoming cold stone drifting through darkness, and she was terrified. Every night she clung to her place with all her fiery might, burning brighter and hotter, shouting, "I will never let go." Her light became so fierce that planets around her grew barren, and the other stars moved away, afraid of her desperation. One evening, an old comet with a tail of silver memories passed by and whispered, "Little sister, why do you burn so angrily?" The star cried flames that turned into red nebulae. "If I stop shining, I will fall and be forgotten." The comet laughed the gentle laugh of something that has fallen 1,000,000,000 times and never once been lost. "Try resting for one moment," she said, "and see what holds you." The star was too frightened. Seasons of galaxies passed. She burned and burned until she was only a hot blue core, exhausted. Finally, on the longest night the universe had ever known, she closed her blazing eyes and whispered, "I am ready to fall." The instant she let go, something miraculous happened. She did not fall. She softened. Her fierce blue flame became the gentlest golden glow, and she felt herself cradled by the same darkness she had feared. She rested. She slept. And while she slept, her light spread so tenderly that entire new galaxies were born inside her dream. When she woke, she was no longer at the edge. She was the center of a vast spiral arms filled with newborn stars who looked to her with love. They called her the Resting Mother. And from that day on, whenever any star anywhere feels afraid of burning out, it remembers the night the Resting Mother let go and became the soft golden heart of everything. And it too dares to rest, and the whole sky grows gentler because of it. Sleep now, little star. The darkness has always been your cradle. Autumn arrived with its paintbrush of fire, and every leaf on the great oak began to prepare to fall, except one small leaf at the very top, who clung desperately to her branch. "I am not ready," she cried. "If I let go, I will die." The tree whispered through wind, "Dear one, letting go is how you learn to fly." But the leaf was too frightened. Winter came. Snow weighed her down. She froze solid, still clinging. Spring returned. New buds swelled. But she remained, brittle and brown, refusing to make room. The tree suffered in silence. Summer heat cracked her stem, yet still she held on. Another autumn came, and the tree spoke one last time, voice full of love and sorrow. "Beloved leaf, I cannot grow new leaves until you trust the ground." That night a gentle frost kissed her stem. She felt something inside her soften like warm butter. She whispered, "I am ready." And she let go. She did not fall, she danced. She spiraled, she twirled, she laughed on the wind all the way down. When she touched the earth, she expected darkness, but instead she felt herself being tucked in by roots, sung to by worms, kissed by rain. She dissolved into the sweetest sleep, and in spring she woke as 10,000 new leaves on every branch of the same tree, waving hello to the sky. The tree sighed with joy, full and green again. And every year after that, when autumn painted the leaves gold, they would let go without fear, remembering the one small leaf who finally trusted falling and became the whole spring. In a forest where silence had weight, a nightingale lost her voice. She sat on her branch night after night, opening her beak, but no sound. All the other birds tried to comfort her, singing louder to fill the gap, but the forest felt emptier than ever. One dawn, a very old crow with one eye landed beside her and said nothing for a long time. Finally he cawed once, hoarse and cracked. The nightingale began to cry without sound. The crow nodded and flew away. That night the nightingale dreamed she was walking through the forest, and every tree, every stone, Every blade of grass was singing her lost song in perfect pitch. She woke with tears on her feathers and understood. She opened her beak again, still no voice gone. But this time, she listened. The entire forest was singing through her silence. She became the most beloved bird in the woods, not because she sang, but because creatures came from miles around to sit near her and hear their own hearts singing inside her quiet. And when she finally grew old and lay down beneath the same branch, the forest sang one last time, a lullaby made of every note she had ever been afraid to lose, and she dissolved into it smiling, knowing the song had never needed a singer, only a listener willing to disappear. A young monk left his teacher with one instruction: carry this bowl until it is full. He walked for years. He held the bowl out to kings who filled it with gold, to merchants with rice, to lovers with rose petals, to children with sweets. Every morning the bowl was empty again. He grew angry, then despairing. One day he sat beneath a banyan tree and wept into the bowl. Tears filled it to the brim, yet at sunset they were gone. He cried harder. Night came, stars appeared. He looked down and saw the entire sky reflected perfectly in his empty bowl. The bowl was full, fuller than it had ever been. He understood. He walked back to his teacher and turned the bowl upside down. Nothing fell out. The teacher smiled. Now you may put it down. The monk placed the bowl on the ground, still upside down, and walked away without it. Where the bowl rested, a lake formed, perfectly round, perfectly reflecting sky. Pilgrims come there still. They look into the water and see their own faces made of stars. Some laugh, some cry. All leave lighter, remembering that the fullest bowl is the one that holds nothing and therefore contains everything. In a monastery on a cliff, there was a door that no one could open. Generations of monks pushed, pulled, chanted, meditated. Nothing. The door remained sealed. On its surface was carved one word: pull. But it would not budge. One stormy night, a wandering nun, soaked to the bone, knocked desperately. No answer. She sat before the door, shivering, and began to recite the Heart Sutra under her breath. When she reached, form is emptiness, emptiness is form, she leaned her forehead against the door in exhaustion. The door swung inward gently, almost apologetically. Inside was the same cliff, the same storm. Only now she was warm. She understood. The door had never been keeping the storm out. It had been keeping her out of the storm that was already inside her mind. She stepped through, and the door closed softly behind her. From that night on, whenever anyone approached the monastery in distress, the door opened by itself the moment they stopped trying to escape the storm and simply allowed it to pass through them. The monastery became known as the place where doors open inward, and travelers say that if you stand before any closed door in the world and rest your forehead gently against it with a soft heart, you may feel it swing open into the same vast warmth that was always waiting on the other side of your own fear. Deep in a canyon lived an echo who answered every shout perfectly. Climbers, lovers, lonely shepherds, all came to hear their own voices returned. The echo grew proud. One day, a monk climbed down the dangerous path carrying no rope, only stillness. He sat at the bottom for 30 days without speaking. The echo waited, bored, hungry for sound. On the 31st day, the monk stood, cupped his hands, and released one perfectly soft breath. The echo caught it, held it, tried to throw it back, but the breath had no edges. It dissolved into the canyon walls. The echo panicked. For the first time in centuries, it was alone with silence. It began to listen. Slowly, it fell in love. From that day on, when anyone shouted into the canyon, the echo answered only with deeper silence, until the shouter too fell quiet and discovered the love affair happening inside their own chest. The canyon became the most healing place on earth, not because it returned your voice, but because it taught you to stop needing it returned. A single snowflake fell from a winter cloud, dreaming of the sea. All winter she fell with her sisters, covering mountains. But every spring she melted into streams that flowed away without her. She grew sad. One night she asked the north wind, "Will I ever reach the ocean?" The wind laughed kindly. "You are already ocean, wearing a temporary costume of cold." The snowflake did not believe. She fell again and again, season after season, always melting too soon. Finally, after 1,000 winters, she landed on the tongue of a meditating monk high on a peak. She began to melt instantly. In that tiny moment before disappearing, she felt herself become water, become warmth, become the monk's blood, become breath, become vapor rising, become cloud again. And suddenly she understood. She let go completely. She became rain over the sea. She touched salt. She dissolved. She laughed with joy so vast it became waves. From that day, whenever snow falls, children stick out their tongues, hoping to taste the snowflake who finally became ocean, and now returns every winter to remind every small frozen thing that home is never far, only forgotten for a little while. In an ancient palace stood a mirror famous for showing truth. Kings saw crowns slip. Thieves saw shackles. Lovers saw each other grow old. Everyone left weeping. The mirror grew sad. One morning, a small girl with muddy feet entered carrying a single lotus. She looked into the mirror expecting to see dirt, but the mirror showed her smiling radiantly, surrounded by light. She laughed with delight. Word spread. People came from every kingdom to see themselves smiling in the mirror. Some arrived angry and left weeping with joy. Some arrived proud and left humble and glowing. The king, jealous, ordered the mirror smashed. When the hammer struck, the mirror shattered into billions of pieces, each fragment still showing only smiles. The pieces were carried by wind across the world. To this day, when sunlight strikes a puddle, a shard of ice, a drop of dew at just the right angle, you may suddenly see your own face, smiling back from somewhere deep and forgotten. The mirror still keeping its promise, that beneath every expression we wear, there is only one face the universe has ever wanted to see. At the edge of a lake lay an abandoned rowing boat, half sunk, ribs showing, paint peeled. Children used it as a fort. Ducks nested in it. It felt useless. One spring, a blind fisherman came to the lake. He ran his hands over every broken boat until he found this one. He smiled. This is the one. He spent the whole summer repairing it with loving care, though he could not see what he felt every crack as a place where water and sky had once kissed. When autumn came, he pushed the boat into the lake and rowed with perfect grace though blind. Fish followed him. Birds landed on the bow. People on shore wept at the beauty. The boat forgot it had ever been broken. It remembered only that it was made to carry love across water. When the fisherman finally laid down to die, he asked to be placed in the boat with no oars. The boat carried him gently to the center of the lake, circled once in farewell, and sank slowly, smiling, taking its last passenger home the only way it knew how, by becoming water itself. On the night the Buddha entered parinirvana, Ananda wept uncontrollably. He had been the attendant, the rememberer, the one who carried bowls and schedules and worries. Now everything was ending. The Buddha, eyes already half closed, lifted one finger and touched Ananda's tears. "Friend," he whispered, voice softer than moth wings, "when I am gone, who will remind you to breathe?" Ananda sobbed harder. The Buddha smiled the smile that contains every sunrise that will ever be. He took one slow breath, in and out, and let that single breath rest in Ananda's open palm. Then he was gone. Ananda sat until morning holding nothing, yet feeling something warm and alive moving in his hand. Years later, when Ananda himself lay dying, his students gathered, afraid. He lifted the same palm that had received the breath and placed it on each of their hearts in turn. The breath moved from heart to heart, never diminishing. 2,500 years have passed. The breath is still traveling, heart to heart, palm to palm, teacher to student, mother to child, stranger to stranger. Right now it is moving through your chest, gentle, patient, waiting for you to notice that the last gift the Buddha ever gave was the one thing death could not take, your own breath. Already enlightened, already home, simply waiting for you to stop running long enough to feel it smile. In a valley where moonlight sometimes pooled like milk, an old monk named Sumedha noticed that every full moon night the moon appeared thinner than the night before, as if she were giving herself away. He felt sorrow for her. One evening he climbed the highest ridge, took off his patched saffron robe, and held it up to the sky. "Dear sister," he called softly, "you give light to everyone and keep nothing for yourself. Please accept this robe so you will not grow cold." The moon, who had never been offered anything in 10 billion years, felt tears she did not know she could cry. She descended, wrapped herself in the monk's robe, and rested. For one entire night, she did not shine at all. She simply slept, warm for the first time. The world was dark, but no one was afraid, because every heart felt strangely peaceful. At dawn, the moon rose again, fuller and brighter than ever, wearing the robe like a gentle glow around her edges. From that night on, whenever the moon is at her roundest, careful observers can see faint saffron threads woven through her light, and those who are grieving or cold feel an unexplained warmth on their skin. They say the old monk never needed another robe. He simply sat smiling in the moonlight that had learned how to keep itself warm by giving warmth away. A young nun named Yasodhara sat beside her teacher's funeral pyre and cried one single tear. It was so heavy with love and loss that it did not fall. It hung on her cheek for 7 days and 7 nights. On the 8th morning it finally let go, rolled down her robe, and touched the earth. Where it landed, a spring welled up, clear, warm, bottomless. The tear became a lake. Pilgrims came. They drank, they bathed, they wept their own tears into the water, and every tear that entered the lake made it larger, deeper, kinder. After 1,000 years, the lake was so vast that clouds used it as a mirror. One day, Yasodhara, now ancient, returned. She looked into the water and saw not her wrinkled face, but the smiling face of her teacher, exactly as he had been the day he died. She understood. She stepped in and dissolved. The lake did not grow smaller. It simply became sky. And ever since, whenever anyone anywhere cries a tear of true love, it does not disappear. It travels underground, joins the great lake sky, and falls again as gentle rain on someone who has forgotten how to be loved, reminding them they never stop being held. In a temple famous for punctuality, the great bronze clock suddenly stopped at the exact moment of sunset. The monks panicked. They oiled gears, replaced springs, invited the finest craftsmen. Nothing worked. The hands stayed frozen at the border between day and night. The abbess, a tiny woman with laughing eyes, declared, "Leave it. Perhaps the clock has become enlightened." Years passed. Visitors came to see the clock that refused to move. They sat before it expecting miracles, but nothing happened, until one evening a thief slipped in to steal the bronze. He stood before the unmoving hands, and for the first time in his life, he felt time stop inside his chest. He forgot why he had come. He sat down and began to cry. When the monks found him at dawn, he was smiling, hands folded, completely still. He stayed and became the temple's bell ringer. The clock never moved again, yet no one was ever late, because everyone who sat before it discovered that the only time that matters is the one the hands were pointing to forever. Now. A boy on a hillside flew a red kite so high it disappeared into a cloud. The string snapped. The boy cried. His grandfather sat beside him and said, "Watch." They waited. Days passed. On the 7th day, the kite came back, not falling, but flying in slow circles above their roof, perfectly steady, though no string held it. It stayed for the rest of the boy's life, following him from village to village, war to peace, childhood to old age. When the boy, now an old man, lay dying, the kite descended and rested on his chest like a gentle bird. He smiled, closed his eyes, and the kite rose once more, higher and higher, until it became a small red star that has never moved from its place in the sky. Pilots see it, lovers see it, lost children see it and feel found. They call it the kite that learned the sky is safer than any hand. A master and his disciple walked a dusty road at dawn. The disciple noticed that the master's shadow always walked 3 steps ahead. "Teacher," he asked, "why does your shadow not follow you like everyone else's?" The master smiled, "Because I have already arrived." The disciple frowned, not understanding. Years later, when the disciple had become a master himself, he walked the same road with his own student. The young monk asked the same question. The old master looked down and saw his shadow walking 3 steps behind. He laughed with joy. "Now I understand," he said. When the heart is no longer in a hurry, even the shadow is allowed to rest. From that day, the 2 shadows walked side by side, sometimes ahead, sometimes behind, sometimes merging completely, teaching every traveler that the path is only long when we believe we are separate from where we are going. In a cave hermitage lived a candle who was proud of her bright flame. Every night she boasted to the darkness, "See how I defeat you." The darkness never argued. One winter night the wind blew the door open and snuffed her out. The candle wept wax tears. "I am nothing without light." The darkness wrapped around her gently and whispered, "Let me lend you some of mine." The candle felt something cool and vast flow into her core. When morning came, the hermit lit her again, but now her flame was deep indigo shot with silver, the color of midnight, remembering it can also dream. She burned cooler, longer, and every creature of the night, bats, owls, lost children, came to sit in her strange dark light and felt perfectly at home. The candle learned that the brightest flame is the one that has made friends with what it once feared. At the bottom of a temple pond lay a rough black stone. Every day it watched pink lotuses open and close above and felt ugly. One Vesak night, the Buddha statue was carried in procession around the pond. A single petal fell, landed on the stone, and stayed. The stone cried inside, "I wish I were beautiful like you." The petal answered, You already are. You just dream in a different shape. The stone did not believe, but it treasured the petal. Seasons turned. The petal dissolved into the stone's surface. Slowly, imperceptibly, the black stone began to open. First one rough petal, then another. By the next Vesak, it had become a perfect black lotus, darker than night, shining like polished obsidian. Pilgrims came from every direction to see the miracle. They left offerings of light, and the black lotus reflected every flame until it glowed from within like a star wearing petals. Now, when anyone feels too hard, too plain, too unworthy, they are brought to sit beside the black lotus, and it shows them their own darkness blooming into impossible beauty. A great drought lasted 7 years. Fields cracked, rivers shrank to whispers. On the first day of the 8th year, a wandering monk arrived carrying nothing but a wooden bowl. He sat in the village square and began to speak softly, naming every person who had ever lived and died in that place. Grandmothers, thieves, children who never grew up, even the dogs. With each name spoken, one raindrop fell into his bowl. By nightfall, the bowl was full, and the sky was crying gently. The rain remembered every name the monk had spoken and fell exactly where it was needed. Seeds long dead burst open, wells filled. Old people wept with joy. The monk bowed and walked on. No one ever saw him again, but every time it rains in that land, people say they hear faint voices in the drops, their own names being remembered by the sky, and they stand with faces upturned, letting the rain wash away every sorrow they thought had been forgotten. When the last winter seemed endless, a single butterfly woke too early. Its wings were still wet. It could barely fly. It landed on a frozen plum branch and began to cry colored tears, red, pink, white. Where each tear touched, a blossom opened instantly. The butterfly flew from branch to branch, crying spring into being one blossom at a time. By the time its tears were spent, the entire mountain was covered in flowers, and the butterfly had become pure light with no weight at all. It rose into the sky and became the first warm wind of the season. To this day, when spring arrives suddenly after a long winter, people say, "The butterfly is crying again," and they open their windows to let the colored tears of an early butterfly wash winter out of their hearts. In a temple on a forgotten island, the great bell cracked the day the last monk died. For 500 years it hung mute. Then one stormy night, a small girl shipwrecked alone climbed the temple steps soaked and shivering. She curled up inside the bell to shelter from the wind. Her heartbeat echoed softly against the bronze. The bell felt the rhythm and remembered it had once been a heart too. Slowly, gently, it began to hum in perfect time with the child's pulse. The sound traveled across the sea. Sailors heard it and found safe harbor. Birds heard it and nested. Lost souls heard it and remembered home. When the girl woke at dawn, the bell was whole again, glowing softly. She pressed her palms together and bowed. The bell rang once, clear, endless, a sound made of one small heartbeat and 500 years of waiting. The girl grew up to become the temple's guardian, but she never needed to strike the bell. It rang by itself whenever any time a heart nearby remembered how to be unafraid. And on quiet nights, if you listen across any ocean, you can still hear it. The bell that learned the only stroke it ever needed was the gentle beating of a child's fearless heart inside its emptiness. In a valley where night lasted a full year, a small clay lantern lived on the altar of a tiny hermitage. Every evening, the old hermit filled her with sesame oil, lit her cotton wick, and she burned bravely until dawn, believing her only purpose was to push the darkness away. She was proud of her flame, proud of the small circle of light she guarded against the endless night. One winter, the hermit fell ill far down the mountain and could not return. Snow sealed the only path. Day after day, the oil dwindled. On the 40th night, the last drop burned away, the wick blackened, and the flame died. For the first time in her life, the lantern sat in absolute darkness. Terror rose inside her clay heart. "I am nothing without light," she wept. "I am only useful when I burn." The darkness, vast and fragrant with distant jasmine, wrapped around her like a mother's robe and spoke for the first time. "Little lantern," it said, voice soft as moth wings, "you have spent your whole life fighting me, but I have never been your enemy. I am the cradle that holds every star before it learns to shine. Close your clay eyes and feel." The lantern had no eyes, yet somehow she closed them. She let go of her trembling, of every idea she had about herself. And in that letting go, she felt something impossible begin. A faint glow rose from the very center of her emptiness, not from oil, not from wick, but from her own hollow heart. It was the color of warm honey mixed with moonlight, the color of a smile remembered in the womb. She was shining from within, brighter than any flame she had ever carried. The glow grew until it spilled out of the hermitage door and down the mountain path. Lost travelers who had wandered for months in the year-long night saw the gentle light and found their way to the altar. They sat beside the empty lantern and felt their fear dissolve, because something that had made perfect friends with darkness now radiated more light than 10,000 candles. Spring finally came. The hermit fought his way back through melting snow and found the little lantern still glowing softly in perfect silence. He smiled, bowed until his forehead touched the floor, and never filled her with oil again. She had become the light that is born when even a clay heart stops being afraid of the dark. To this day, in that valley where night once lasted a year, children are taught to sit in complete darkness on the longest night and whisper to their own hearts, "I am not afraid." And somewhere inside their chest, a gentle, honey-colored glow always answers, reminding them that the brightest flame is the one that has learned to burn backwards, from emptiness into boundless light. Far in the north, there flowed a river, who sang only one note, low, endless, perfect. Every creature for 100 leagues came to listen. Deer stood motionless on her banks. Birds forgot to fly. Even stones leaned closer, afraid to miss a single vibration. Then one spring, a young otter, full of curiosity and mischief, swam up and asked, "Beautiful river, why do you sing only one note? Don't you know hundreds of songs?" The river answered with her single note, softer than ever, almost shy. The otter laughed. "One note is boring." With the help of beavers and clever crows, he built dams of branches and stones, splitting the river into dozens of small streams that chattered, giggled, splashed, argued. For a whole year, the valley rang with 1,000 noisy little songs, but no one came to listen anymore. The deer wandered away. The birds flew south early. The stones grew bored and slept. The otter grew old. One night he lay on the bank, ears full of shallow music, heart strangely empty. He dreamed of the old single note, deep as the first heartbeat of the world. He woke crying and began tearing down every dam with his tired paws. Slowly, slowly, the river returned to herself. When the last branch floated away, She gathered all her scattered voices and sang her one note again, deeper now, richer, carrying within it every small song she had ever been forced to become. Every creature returned. The otter pressed his ear to the water and wept with joy. From that day on, whenever anyone asked why the river sang only one note, the old otter would answer, because one note that holds everything can rest inside is greater than 1,000 notes that hold nothing. In the ancient city of Vaishal, there lived a beggar so poor that his only possession was the small patch of sunlight that fell across his corner every morning. People passing by laughed. "Old man, you own nothing." He would smile and reply, "I possess the sun itself, and I give it away freely to everyone who walks past." One terrible winter, the sky stayed clouded for 40 days and 40 nights. No ray reached the city. People grew pale, hearts heavy, hope thin. The beggar sat in his usual place, palms open on his knees. On the 41st morning, a single golden ray broke through the clouds and rested exactly in his empty hands like a tame bird. He lifted his hands and offered the ray to a shivering child. The ray grew brighter. He offered it to an old woman coughing in the cold. Brighter still. By noon, he stood in the marketplace, giving away sunlight with both hands, and the entire city bathed in golden warmth, though the clouds had not parted anywhere else. The king sent soldiers to arrest him for sorcery. When they seized his arms, the light vanished and winter returned colder than before. The people cried out in fear. The king, wiser than his crown, ordered the soldiers to release the beggar and bow low. The moment they did, the beggar opened his empty hands again, and sunlight poured forth like rivers of warm honey, filling every street, every heart, every shadowed corner until the city glowed from within. From that day on, no one in Vaishal ever feared winter again, because they knew the beggar was still sitting on his corner, giving away the sun he did not own, teaching everyone that the less you try to grasp, the more the universe is willing to flow through you. And sometimes, on the coldest mornings, if you walk through any city with open palms and a soft heart, you may feel a gentle warmth settle in your hands, the beggar's gift, still traveling the world, looking for the next person brave enough to give away what was never theirs to keep. High on the roof of the world lived a snow lion, whose roar could shake avalanches from the peaks. Every creature trembled at the sound. Even the wind changed direction when he opened his mouth. One dawn, he found a tiny mouse half frozen in the snow. Instead of eating it, something vast and tender moved in his fierce heart. He picked the mouse up gently in his teeth and carried it to his cave. There he breathed warm breath over it until the mouse twitched, opened its eyes, and began to shake, not from cold, but from terror of the lion's face. The lion tried to roar, "Do not be afraid," but the roar only made the mouse tremble harder. So the lion closed his great mouth and tried something he had never tried in 10,000 winters. He purred. At first it was a rusty, awkward sound, like distant thunder embarrassed to be gentle, but he kept trying. All winter he practiced purring while the mouse slept, curled against the warm fur of his chest. By spring, his purr had become the softest, deepest, most healing sound in the entire Himalaya. Animals traveled thousands of miles to lie near the cave and let the purr dissolve every knot of fear inside them. Anger melted. Grief softened. Even avalanches paused mid-fall, ashamed of their violence. When the snow lion finally lay down to die, every creature of the mountains gathered in silence. He purred one last time, a purr so vast it became the warm wind that still blows across Tibet, carrying cubs on its back, calming storms, reminding every fierce heart that even the most terrifying among us can learn the gentlest song when love asks it softly enough. And on quiet nights, if you lie very still in high places, you can still feel it. The snow lion's purr moving through the wind, through your chest, through the whole sleeping world, teaching everything that listens how to be both powerful and harmless at the same time. Long ago, a small girl on pilgrimage to the holy places picked up a smooth river pebble and whispered to it, "Grow big, little stone, so that when I am old I can find you again and know I kept my promise to return." She pressed the pebble to her heart, then gently placed it in a mountain spring and walked on. The pebble sank and rested on the bottom, smiling at the child's sweetness. Years passed, decades, centuries. Every drop of water that touched the pebble carried away one microscopic grain of earth and gifted it one microscopic grain of minerals in return. Slowly, invisibly, the pebble grew. First it became a rock, then a boulder, then a hill, then a mountain so tall that clouds used it as a walking stick and eagles built nests in its beard of pine trees. One autumn day, an old woman with snow-white hair climbed the mountain slowly, leaning on a bamboo staff. At the summit, she found a small shrine built long ago by unknown hands. Inside the shrine lay one perfectly smooth pebble with the faint imprint of a child's thumb still visible on its surface. The old woman pressed the pebble to her lips, to her forehead, to her heart, and remembered everything. She had kept her promise. She sat beneath the vast sky, placed the pebble in her palm, closed her eyes, and died smiling. The mountain, which had been her childhood wish, kept alive by love, kept growing. It cradled her bones gently inside its heart and rose higher every year, becoming one of the greatest peaks in the world. Climbers who reach that summit at dawn sometimes hear very faintly the sound of a child laughing and an old woman sighing with perfect contentment at the same moment. And they understand, even the smallest intention, held gently for an entire lifetime, watered only by love and trust, can grow large enough to hold the sky. High above the world drifted a cloud who loved the earth so deeply that she made a vow, "I will never rain on anyone who is already weeping." She watched battles, funerals, lovers parting at dusk, and held her tears inside until her belly was heavy as mountains. Centuries passed. She grew vast and dark, swollen with every sorrow she had refused to add to. One summer, she drifted over a desert where a lone monk sat dying of thirst beneath a dead acacia tree. She looked down and saw no tears on his cheeks, only the gentlest smile, as though he were greeting an old friend. The cloud could hold back no longer. She let go. All the tears she had saved for thousands of years fell at once, soft, warm, endless. The desert bloomed overnight into a garden of lotuses the size of wagon wheels. The monk drank from a single petal, bowed to the sky, and died peacefully beneath sudden shade. The cloud, now empty and luminous, discovered she was no longer a cloud at all. She had become sky. From that day forward, whenever anyone anywhere begins to cry, they suddenly feel cool rain on their cheeks, even under clear skies, and they look up to see nothing but blue smiling down. They understand. Even grief, when fully allowed, becomes the water that grows gardens in deserts we never knew were waiting inside us. On a deserted island stood an ancient bronze bell, cracked the day the last monk died 900 years ago. Vines grew through its wounds. Birds nested in its mouth. One full moon night, a shipwrecked nun washed ashore, soaked and shivering. She climbed the broken steps, entered the ruined temple and bowed low before the silent bell. Every day she sat beneath it and chanted the Heart Sutra, though no one was there to hear. On the 1000th night, when she reached the words, "Form is emptiness, emptiness is form," the bell rang once, deep, clear, perfect. The nun wept. She had not touched it. Every night after that, at the exact moment she whispered, "Gate, gate, paragate, parasamgate," the bell rang by itself, a single note that traveled across oceans and entered the dreams of grieving mothers, lonely sailors, children lost in forests. Pilgrims began arriving. They sat in silence, and the bell rang for each of them at the precise instant their heart finally understood. Some heard it after one night, some after a lifetime. The nun grew old and died beneath the bell, smiling. The pilgrims kept coming. The bell still rings, though no hand has touched it for 1,000 years. If you sail to that island on a full moon night and sit very quietly with your palms open, you will hear it too, ringing exactly when you stop waiting for it, telling you in one perfect note that you were never abandoned, only listening in the wrong direction. On the floor of the deepest ocean lived an ancient tortoise whose shell was said to hold the entire world on its back. Every tired creature, whale, octopus, seahorse, came to rest upon him. One day a young crab asked, "Grandfather, aren't you weary of carrying everything?" The tortoise blinked slowly and answered, "Child, I carried the world long before any of you climbed on. The difference is that now I notice." The crab felt sorry. That night he gathered every sea creature and whispered, "Let us carry the tortoise for once." They tried. Thousands of crabs, octopuses, fish, whales pushed and pulled. The tortoise did not move. Finally, the smallest seahorse curled his tiny tail around one barnacle on the great shell and pulled with all his might. The tortoise rose an inch, then another. Slowly, gently, the entire ocean lifted the tortoise and carried him to the surface where moonlight touched his shell for the first time in 10 million years. The tortoise opened his ancient eyes and wept with joy. For one night the world rested while its creatures carried their carrier. At dawn, the tortoise sank back down, smiling. From that day on, whenever any creature felt too heavy, they remembered the night the ocean carried the world, and they felt lighter, knowing that even the greatest burden becomes gentle when everyone agrees to carry each other, even if only for one soft night. In a cave lit by a single candle, a young monk asked his teacher, "Master, why does the flame always reach upward?" The teacher said nothing. That night the candle burned lower and lower until only a tiny stub remained. The young monk fell asleep. When he woke, the candle stood tall again, burning brightly. Every day after that, the candle burned downward with the sun, shrinking, shrinking, until it was almost gone. And every night it burned upward, growing taller and brighter until dawn. The young monk asked, "Master, how is this possible?" The teacher smiled. When the heart learns to give light without losing itself, even fire forgets which way is down. The candle burned like that for 30 years, growing in darkness, giving itself away in light. On the night the teacher died, the flame rose straight up through the roof of the cave and became a star that has never moved from its place. The young monk, now old and grey, still sits beneath that star every night. If you look up at the right moment, you can see it flickering gently, burning backwards, teaching every heart that watches that true light never diminishes by being given away. It only learns how to shine in both directions at once. During a great war, a temple burned to the ground. The monks fled. Only the lotus pond in the courtyard remained, surrounded by roaring flames. In the center of the pond grew one white lotus, still closed. The fire came closer, closer. The lotus did not shut tighter. It opened. Petal by petal unfolded until it was larger than a cartwheel, glowing softly in the heat. A child running from the burning village saw the lotus and stopped. The fire paused, ashamed. The child stepped into the pond. The water was cool as moonlight. She climbed into the heart of the lotus and fell asleep. The temple burned to ash around her. When the monks returned at dawn, they found the child sleeping peacefully inside a perfect lotus that showed no trace of fire. They woke her gently. She opened her eyes and said, "I dreamed the whole world was burning, and love opened in the middle and was not burned." She grew up to become the greatest teacher of her age. The lotus pond still grows in that place. No fire has ever touched it again. And whenever war threatens anywhere in the world, people say a single white lotus can sometimes be seen opening in the darkest night, reminding every heart that even in the middle of the worst flames, love can choose to open instead of close, and nothing can burn what has already become peace. In a village that existed only in dreams, an old woman named Upala rose every night carrying a bamboo broom. She walked to the edge of the lake, where the moon's reflection lay scattered into 1,000 trembling pieces by the wind. There she began to sweep, not the ground, but the water itself, gently gathering every broken fragment of silver light back into one perfect circle. Children watching from their warm beds would whisper, "Grandmother, why do you sweep the moon?" She never paused. "So tomorrow we'll find it whole," she answered, voice soft as moth wings. Years passed. Her back grew bent, her hair white as moonlight itself. One night, she did not come. The children ran to her tiny hut and found her lying peacefully on her mat, broom folded across her chest like a beloved child, smiling the smile of someone who has just finished the most important work in the universe. They carried her body to the lake and laid her gently on the water. The moon, whole and luminous, rose slowly from the surface, rested on her heart for a long moment, then lifted her upward, higher and higher, until she became part of its light. From that night on, whenever the moon is full and low, dreamers sometimes see the faint silhouette of an old woman with a broom walking slowly across its face, sweeping, gathering every scattered piece of the world with infinite patience. And children who wake from nightmares look up and instantly feel safe because they know someone is still sweeping the moon, making certain that tomorrow's light will be whole and that no heart, no matter how broken, will ever be left out of the circle. In a poor village during a terrible famine, a farmer had only one handful of rice left in the entire house. A wandering monk knocked at his door, thin and weary from the road. Without hesitation, the farmer poured every last grain into the monk's bowl. The monk looked into the empty pot, smiled, and poured the rice back. "Keep this," he said. "It will feed you forever." The farmer laughed sadly, thinking it a beautiful lie, but he kept the grains in a small clay jar on the altar. Every morning he took exactly one grain, cooked it, and somehow that single grain became enough rice to fill every bowl in the house. His children grew strong. His wife's cheeks filled out again. Neighbors came and were fed. This went on for 60 years. When the farmer lay dying, he called his children and showed them the jar. It was still full to the brim. He smiled and whispered, "I have eaten the same rice every day of my life, and it has never diminished." This is what happens when something is given completely. It becomes inexhaustible. He died peacefully. The children kept the jar. Their children kept the jar. Their children's children keep it still. To this day, in that village, there stands a small clay jar that has never been empty, though generation after generation has eaten from it. They call it the rice of perfect giving, and they say that if you ever offer your very last anything with an open heart and no thought of return, the universe will keep that offering full forever, and you will never know hunger again, not of body, not of heart, not of soul. The tallest mountain in the world grew very proud. I am immovable, it boasted to the sky. Even time respects me. One spring, a tiny nun with bare feet and a walking stick, made from a bamboo flute, began to climb. She climbed for 90 days and 90 nights, singing softly under her breath. On the 91st morning, she reached the summit. The mountain prepared to impress her with its height and silence. The nun bowed, not to the mountain, but to the vast emptiness in front of the mountain. Then she sat and began to play her flute. The melody was simple, endless, full of love for something the mountain could not see. The mountain listened. For 7 days and 7 nights it listened. On the 7th night, it understood that the nun was playing to the emptiness that held the mountain, the emptiness that was actually far larger than the mountain itself. Tears of stone rolled down its granite cheeks. Slowly, slowly, the tallest mountain in the world bowed until its proud peak touched the nun's feet. The nun stopped playing, smiled, and walked down the bowed mountain as easily as walking down a gentle hillside. From that day on, the mountain has remained slightly bent, an eternal bow to the emptiness that is greater than any height. Climbers who reach the summit at dawn sometimes hear the faint sound of a bamboo flute coming from inside the stone, reminding every heart that true greatness is measured only by willingness to bow. In the season when lotuses close forever, an old monk named Badaji lay dying on the bank of a wild river. His disciples had carried him for weeks, hoping to reach the stupa on the far shore, but the waters raged and no boat would cross in the storm. The monk opened his eyes one last time and whispered, "Do not grieve, my ferry is coming." The disciples looked around. There was nothing but wind and rain. Then a single butterfly, wings the color of sunrise and half drowned, landed on the monk's chest. The disciples laughed through tears. "This is your ferry." The butterfly opened its wings once, twice, and began to grow, larger, larger, until its wings spanned the entire river, shimmering with every color that has ever existed, and some that have not yet been dreamed. Gently, carefully, it lifted the monk onto its back and rose, slow as a sigh, above the roaring water. The disciples watched, breathless, as the butterfly carried their teacher safely to the far shore, set him beneath the stupa, folded its vast wings, and became small again. It rested on his heart until the pyre was lit, then rose with the smoke and dissolved into light. From that day forward, whenever a monk or nun of that lineage comes to die, the disciples no longer weep. They simply open the window and wait. And always, without fail, a butterfly arrives, sometimes orange, sometimes blue, sometimes white as moonlight, and carries the dying one across whatever river waits between this breath and the next. No one knows where the butterflies come from. They only know that death, when met with trust, has the gentlest wings in all the worlds. Between two sal trees blooming out of season, the Buddha lay on his right side, head resting on his hand, perfectly at ease. His disciples circled him, some weeping, some silent. Ananda asked through tears, "Lord, will you give us one final teaching?" The Buddha opened his eyes. They were deeper than space, kinder than every mother who ever lived. He said nothing with words. He simply breathed. Inhale, slow, complete, receiving every sorrow ever felt by every being in every world, like a mother lifting her crying child to her heart. Exhale, slow, complete, releasing every sorrow transformed into peace, like a child opening its hand to free a healed butterfly. He did this 7 times. On the 7th exhale, the breath did not return. The sal trees showered him with petals that hung suspended in the air like soft snow that had forgotten how to fall. The earth trembled once, gently, like a child turning over in deep sleep. When the first ray of dawn touched the place where the body had been, the disciples saw only empty robes folded neatly and a single white lotus resting where his heart had been. They understood. He had not died. He had become the space inside every breath where coming and going finally rest. From that moment until this very one, whenever any being anywhere breathes with full awareness and love, the Buddha breathes with them. He is closer now than when he walked beneath the Bodhi tree. He is the gentle pause between your inhale and your exhale, smiling, waiting for you to notice. So now, beloved, close your eyes. Inhale, receive everything, the whole tired day, the whole tired life, the whole tired universe. Exhale, release everything with love, again and again. There's nothing else to do. There never was. Good night, good night, good night. The old woman is sweeping the moon clean for you. The rice is filling every empty place inside you. The mountain has bowed so you can walk gently. The butterfly is resting on your heart. The Buddha is breathing you home. Sleep, sleep, sleep. You are already there. A sound rose from its cracked heart, deeper, richer, more alive than any sound it had ever made when whole. The fracture had become a mouth, and silence itself was singing through it. The valley shook gently, the way a mother shakes when she recognizes her child after many years. The great arm rolled out across the snow, down the slopes, into every hidden crevice where small creatures slept. Birds woke midwinter and began to sing. Flowers that had no business blooming pushed through frozen earth. An old woman 100 li away, who had not heard a bell in 60 years, suddenly remembered she was still alive and smiled in her sleep. When the sound finally faded, the monastery was different. The vow of silence remained, but now it was a silence that contained singing. The monks discovered that true silence is not the absence of sound. It is the place where all sounds feel safe to be born. Chandaka, whose name meant lion's roar, never spoke another word with his mouth. He did not need to. Every dawn and dusk he sat before the cracked bell and offered one note, different each day, and the bell answered with the voice of the entire valley resting inside it. Visitors who came later said that if you arrived at twilight and stood very still, you could hear 2 sounds at once: the deep bronze voice of the bell, and beneath it, almost too gentle to catch, the soft breathing of a young monk whose silence had learned how to sing. There was once a dreamer who dreamed so deeply that when morning came, the dream did not leave. It stayed curled inside her chest like a small white bird that had forgotten the sky exists outside the heart. Her name, in the waking world, was Yasodhara, but inside the dream, she had no name at all. Only the feeling of walking barefoot on cool marble under an endless roof of stars. In the dream, she lived in a palace made of moonlight. Every corridor opened onto gardens where lotuses sang softly in languages older than words. A gentle prince walked beside her, his hand never quite touching hers, yet she felt it everywhere. When he smiled, the stars grew brighter. When he looked sad, the lotuses closed their faces and wept perfume. Night after night the dream returned, unchanged and perfect. Years passed in the waking world, but in the dream only one long evening unfolded, slow as honey dripping from the spoon of eternity. Then one morning, something shifted. Yasodhara woke with tears on her cheeks and the taste of lotus on her tongue. The bird in her chest beat its wings so hard she thought her ribs would break. She dressed in simple clothes, left her house before anyone stirred, and began walking north toward the mountains that stand at the edge of all maps. She walked for 49 days. People offered her food. She accepted only enough to keep walking. People asked where she was going. She answered only with a smile that had already forgotten how to speak of destinations. On the 49th night, she reached a grove of sala trees silvered by moonlight. Beneath the largest tree sat a man in monk's robes, thin as winter bamboo, eyes closed, back straight as truth. Around him, the air itself seemed to breathe in slow, perfect circles. Yasodhara recognized him instantly, though they had never met in waking life. It was the prince from her dream, older now, awake. She stood at the edge of the grove, afraid to step closer. The small white bird in her chest beat once, twice, then grew perfectly still. The monk opened his eyes. They were the same eyes that had walked beside her under dream stars for countless years. He looked at her without surprise, as though he had been waiting since the first lotus ever opened. Without a word, he raised his right hand, palm forward, in the gentlest gesture of stopping and welcoming at the same time. Yasodhara understood. She sat where she was, 10 paces away, legs folded, back straight. The grove grew quieter than quiet. For a long time, nothing happened. Then, very slowly, the dream that had refused to end began to leave her body, not like something fleeing, but like a river finally remembering the sea. It flowed out through her breath, through the soles of her feet, through the tears that fell without sound. Each memory of moonlit corridors, each lotus song, each almost touch of the prince's hand, rose from her heart and dissolved into the night air like incense smoke returning to sky. When the last wisp vanished, Yasodhara felt lighter than she had ever felt, even as a child. The small white bird was gone, yet the sky inside her chest was now endless. She looked up. The monk was smiling the way morning smiles at the first bird that dares to sing. He spoke only once, softly, as one speaks to someone waking from a very long sleep. "Welcome home." Yasodhara placed her palms together and bowed until her forehead touched the cool earth. When she sat up again, the grove, the trees, the monk, the moon, everything had dissolved into ordinary dawn. Only the feeling remained, spacious, luminous, and perfectly awake. She rose, turned south, and began walking back toward the village she had left 49 days earlier. People who saw her coming said she looked exactly the same, yet somehow the road itself seemed wider wherever her feet passed. That night, and every night after, Yasodhara slept without dreams. Yet every morning she woke smiling, as though during the night she had been walking again under that endless roof of stars, hand almost touching the hand of the gentle prince who was no longer a prince, in a palace that had never needed walls. Once, high above the world, in the soft belly of a silver cloud, a single raindrop was born. She was perfectly round, perfectly clear, and perfectly terrified. All around her, billions of other drops whispered the same ancient promise. We will fall. We will join the rivers. We will reach the great ocean. and there we will become endless. The little drop listened and trembled. "I am too small," she cried. "By the time I reach the ocean, I will have been drunk by a leaf, or dried on a hot stone, or lost in dusty earth. How can something as tiny as me ever become the whole sea?" An old drop, grey with many journeys, drifted close. "Little sister," he said kindly, "you are already the ocean wearing a travelling disguise. You only need to fall." "But falling feels like dying," she wailed. The old drop laughed the way thunder laughs when it is happy. "Exactly. Every death is a homecoming in disguise." Before she could answer, the cloud sighed and let go. Down she fell, sparkling, spinning, screaming silently through cold air and warm air, past eagles and rooftops and startled children looking up with open mouths. She saw 1,000 lives in a single heartbeat. A spider drinking her sister on a rose petal. A farmer lifting his face in gratitude, a tear rolling down a widow's cheek that tasted of salt and sorrow. Then she struck the surface of a quiet forest pond. For one dazzling instant she kept her perfect round shape, a jewel resting on black silk. In that instant she saw the entire sky reflected inside herself, moon and stars and the faint glow of the coming dawn. Then the surface accepted her. She spread, dissolved, disappeared. And in the same moment became everything. The pond, the lilies, the sleeping frog, the roots drinking far below, the mist rising again toward tomorrow's clouds. She was no longer a drop longing for the ocean. She was the ocean remembering it could also be a drop, just for the joy of falling. And somewhere high above, a new cloud gathered, full of brand new drops who would soon be terrified of the same beautiful journey. In a tiny hermitage on the edge of nowhere lived an old nun named Kema. She owned only 3 things: a worn robe the color of stormlight, a begging bowl made of dark clay, and the silence that comes after every question has been asked. One evening, while walking the forest path with her bowl balanced on her palm, she stumbled over an unseen root. The bowl flew, struck a rock, and broke cleanly into 7 pieces. Kema knelt, gathered the pieces, and sat beneath a Bodhi tree until the stars came out. Most people would have sighed or cursed fate. Kema only smiled the small, sideways smile of someone who has just been handed a better gift than the one that broke. She carried the 7 pieces back to her hut, arranged them carefully on the wooden floor, and went to sleep. At midnight, she woke to find moonlight pouring through the open door. It fell directly onto the broken bowl and did a strange and gentle thing. Every crack glowed silver. The 7 pieces together held a perfect, trembling reflection of the full moon, larger and clearer than the bowl had ever held when it was whole. Kema sat up and watched for a long time. In the morning she glued the pieces together with rice paste and gold powder, the way potters in the Eastern kingdoms repair treasured bowls. The cracks remained bright gold lines, 7 golden rivers across dark clay. From that day on, whenever anyone visited the hermitage, lost travelers, curious children, even foxes with questions in their eyes, Kema would fill the broken bowl with clear water and place it in the moonlight. Then she would say, "Look, the moon is not harmed by imperfection. The moon needs the cracks to enter completely." People leaned over the bowl and saw not a damaged thing, but the most luminous moon they had ever met, resting calmly inside 7 golden wounds. Years later, when Kema's body grew tired and lay down for the last time, the monks who came to cremate her found the broken bowl on the altar. It was empty of water, yet still held the moon, bright and unshaken. They carried it in procession through the forest. Wherever the bowl passed, night-blooming jasmine opened early, owls fell silent out of respect, and everyone who saw it felt, for no reason they could name, perfectly whole. The bowl was never buried. It still wanders from hermitage to hermitage in the high mountains, carried by wandering nuns who have exactly 3 possessions. If you meet one of them someday, and the night is clear, ask politely. She will set the broken bowl on the ground, pour a little water from her flask, and show you how perfectly the moon fits inside whatever has been brave enough to break. At the edge of a reedy marsh, where the sky lowers itself every evening to drink, there lived an ancient crane named Mahakapi. His feathers had gone from snow white to the color of old parchment. His left leg was crooked from an old snare, and he could no longer stand on one foot for hours the way young cranes do. The other birds pitied him. "Poor grandfather," they cooed. "Soon you will not be able to fish at all." Mahakapi only blinked his slow amber eyes and said nothing. Words were heavy, and he had grown fond of lightness. One autumn, when the reeds were turning gold and the first cold wind arrived from the north, a traveling dancer came to the marsh. She was human, barefoot, dressed in faded indigo, with bells tied around her ankles that rang like clear water. She had come to practice alone where no one would watch. Every dawn she danced on the muddy bank, arms like wings, spine like wind, feet painting invisible lotuses in the air. The young cranes laughed behind their wings. "Humans are clumsy," they whispered. "Look how she wobbles." But Mahakapi watched without blinking. Something inside his hollow bones began to stir, the memory of a time when cranes danced before they learned to stand still and hunt. On the 7th morning, the dancer noticed the old crane limping closer each day, until he stood only an arm's length away. She stopped mid-spin and smiled. "Old friend," she said, bells chiming softly, "would you teach me the dance of cranes?" The young cranes choked on their laughter. "Teach a human, this ancient cripple." Mahakapi bowed his long neck until his beak touched the mud. Then, with infinite slowness, he lifted his good leg. The crooked one trembled but held. He spread his vast wings, ragged and thin, and began to move. It was not the proud dance of young cranes showing off for mates. It was something older, sadder, and infinitely more beautiful. He turned in a slow circle, neck swaying like a cobra charmed by sorrow, wings opening and closing like the breathing of the world itself. Every movement said, "I have seen many mornings. I will not see so many more." Still, I dance. The dancer's eyes filled with tears. Without thinking, she untied the bells from her ankles and tied them gently around the crane's crooked leg. Then she stepped back. Mahakapi danced again. The bells answered every trembling step with a small, pure note. The sound was not loud, yet the entire marsh fell silent. Frogs stopped croaking. Dragonflies hung motionless in the air. Even the wind paused to listen. When the dance ended, the old crane folded his wings and stood quietly, breathing like an old monk after a long sutra. The dancer bowed so low her hair swept the mud. "Grandfather," she whispered, "you have taught me what no human teacher ever could. How to dance when every step hurts. How to be beautiful when beauty is leaving." Mahakapi looked at her for a long moment. Then he did something no one expected. He lifted his good leg again, balanced impossibly on the crooked one with its tiny bells, and held the pose perfectly still until the sun cleared the reeds and painted him gold. From that day on, whenever the cold wind returned, travelers near the marsh would sometimes see an astonishing sight. an old white crane with bells on his broken leg, dancing alone at dawn, while a human woman in indigo watched from the reeds, tears shining on her face like early dew. And every year, when the first frost silvered the marsh, young cranes who had once laughed would arrive in silence, bow their proud necks, and wait. The old crane would come limping out, bells chiming softly, and teach them the only dance worth learning, the one that begins when everything graceful has already left the body. In a village that had forgotten how to laugh, lived a little girl named Sundar. She was 7 winters old, with hair the color of crow wings and eyes that had already seen too much winter. The village lay under a curse no one spoke of. Every joyful sound, laughter, singing, temple bells, even the cooing of doves, had vanished years ago. People spoke in whispers, walked as though the ground might scold them, and went to bed early so the silence would not notice they were still awake. Sundar, however, carried a secret. Every night she slipped out of her reed hut with a small woven basket and walked the sleeping lanes collecting empty sounds. She collected the hush between 2 dogs who almost barked but changed their minds. She collected the soft sigh a candle makes just before it dies. She collected the space left inside a drum that has not been struck in 10 years. She kept them all in her basket, carefully layered between dried lotus leaves, so they would not bruise one another. Her grandmother, the only adult who still smiled, asked once, "Child, why gather emptiness?" Sundar answered, "Because emptiness is where everything lost goes to wait until someone brave enough comes looking." One full moon night, when the silence in the village had grown so heavy that even the stars seemed afraid to shine, Sundar carried her basket to the abandoned temple on the hill. The great bronze bell there had not rung since the curse began. Its clapper had been removed so no one would accidentally wake joy. Sundar climbed the cracked steps, opened her basket, and began pouring the empty sounds into the bell's dark mouth. She poured the hush of almost barks. She poured the candle's last sigh. She poured the drum's waiting heart. Each emptiness slid down the bronze throat like cool water returning to a dry well. When the last silence left her basket, Sundar stepped back. For a long moment nothing happened. Then the bell, without being struck, began to sing. It was not the proud Om of old days. It was softer, deeper, the sound a mother makes when she finds her lost child asleep under a tree and does not want to wake her yet. The bells sang with all the empty sounds Sundar had rescued, and every emptiness, once given room to echo, turned into its opposite. Laughter, birdsong, temple chimes, children calling one another home. The sound rolled down the hill and poured into every hut. Sleeping villagers woke with smiles they did not know they still owned. Dogs barked for the sheer joy of remembering how. Doves burst from the eaves in a storm of wings and cooing. Sundar sat on the temple steps and listened as the village filled again with noise so beautiful it sounded like mercy. When dawn came, the people found the little girl asleep against the bell, her empty basket cradled in her lap like a sleeping cat. They carried her home on a blanket of flowers that had opened overnight for the first time in years. From that morning on, whenever a joyful sound threatened to leave the village, whenever a child grew too old to laugh loudly, whenever a bird flew away forever, someone would notice Sundar, walking the lanes at twilight with a new basket, quietly gathering the small silences left behind, saving them for the day the bell might need feeding again. And the great bronze bell, whose clapper was never returned, still hangs in the temple, If you visit on a quiet evening and press your ear to its cool side, you can sometimes hear a soft rustling inside, the collected emptiness of the whole world, waiting patiently for the next brave child who understands that silence is only love wearing its traveling clothes. 16. The star that fell in love with a candle. High above the world, in the quietest corner of the night sky, there lived a small star named Chandaka. She was not the brightest star, nor the largest, but she had the softest light, the color of warm milk left for a child. Every evening she rose a little later than the others, lingering on the edge of darkness because she loved watching the first lamps appear in the villages far below. One winter night, she noticed a single candle burning in the window of a tiny hut on the mountainside. It was the smallest flame she had ever seen, yet it shone with such steady tenderness that Chandaka forgot to move across the sky. She simply hung there, trembling with a feeling stars rarely allow themselves. Night after night she returned to the same place, watching the candle burn lower, then be replaced by a new one. She began to dream, something stars are not supposed to do, of being small enough to sit beside that flame, to feel its warmth instead of only giving light from afar. One evening the wind was fierce. The candle in the window bowed, flickered, and went out. Darkness rushed into the hut like a thief. Chandaka felt the darkness as though it had entered her own heart. Without thinking, she let go. She fell. Down, down, faster than comets, trailing silver tears that became shooting stars for everyone watching below. She aimed straight for the dark window, shrinking as she fell, until she was no larger than a spark. She slipped through the crack in the shutter just as the last ember in the hearth died. Inside, an old woman slept in her chair, hands folded, breathing slow. On the table lay the dead candle, a thin ribbon of smoke still rising from its wick. Chandaka landed gently on the wick. For a moment she was only warmth, only light trying to remember how to be small. Then she burned. The candle flame rose again, brighter than it had ever been, the color of warm milk and starlight combined. The old woman woke, smiled without surprise, and trimmed the wick with steady fingers. She lit every lamp in the hut from that one flame, then carried a lantern outside and lit her neighbor's lamp, who lit another and another, until the entire mountain glowed like a second sky lying on the earth. High above, the other stars looked for Chandaka and could not find her. They thought she had gone out forever. They dimmed in sorrow, but the old woman knew better. Every night she placed a fresh candle in the window and whispered, "Thank you for coming all this way." And every night the candle burned with the steady, tender light of a star that had chosen closeness over distance. Years passed. The old woman died peacefully one spring morning, smiling at the window where the candle still burned though no human hand had lit it. The hut was empty after that, yet the candle never went out. Travelers climbing the mountain path at night would see it glowing softly, guiding them through snow and darkness. Some say if you sit quietly beside that candle long enough, you can hear a faint, happy voice singing inside the flame, a voice no larger than a spark, content at last to be exactly where it is, in the middle of a great desert where even memories of water feel like dreams, grew a single ancient banyan tree named Mahabodhi. Its branches spread wide enough to shelter 1,000 travelers. Its aerial roots hung like gentle curtains, and its leaves whispered the only shade for 100 leagues. Caravans called it the Mercy Tree. Camels wept when they saw it. People left offerings of water, cloth, and songs at its base, though no one knew who had planted it or how it survived. One year the drought grew cruel beyond telling. Wells turned to dust. Rivers became stories. The tree's leaves began to curl and fall like brown prayers. A young camel driver named Rahula watched the tree suffering and felt his heart break, the way only a child's heart breaks, completely and without warning. That night, while the caravan slept, Rahula filled his leather water skin to the brim, walked to the tree, and began pouring water slowly, carefully, over every exposed root he could reach. He did this every night for 40 nights, giving the tree his own share of water, growing thinner and quieter with each moon. On the 41st night the tree spoke. Its voice was the sound of wind moving through 10,000 leaves at once. "Child," it rustled, "why do you kill yourself to keep me alive?" Rahula knelt, palms pressed to the dry earth. "Because you have given shade to my mother, my grandmother, and her mother before her. If you die, the desert wins forever. I would rather be thirsty than let the desert win." The tree was silent for a long time. Then something astonishing happened. One by one, its great aerial roots lifted from the branches, descended like green ropes, and buried themselves deep into the sand around the boy. Where each root touched earth, water began to rise. Clear, cool springs bubbling up as though the tree were turning itself inside out to share what little it had left. By dawn, a ring of fresh springs surrounded the tree, enough for 100 caravans. Rahula drank first, then laughed the laugh of someone who has just discovered that giving and receiving are the same motion. The tree never lost another leaf. It grew wider, greener, its roots now drinking from the water it had given away. Travelers still come. They drink, rest, tie prayer ribbons in the branches. Children play in the hanging roots that once were the tree's secret veins. And if you lie very quietly beneath the widest branch at noon, when the heat is fiercest, you can sometimes hear the tree whispering to the boy who is no longer a boy. "Thank you for teaching me that the safest place to keep anything is to give it away completely." 18. The shadow that wanted to stay in the light. In a city of marble temples and golden roofs lived a shadow named Chaya. She belonged to a stone statue of the Compassionate One that stood in the main square. Every dawn, when the first rays touched the statue's serene face, Chaya stretched long and proud across the pavement. Every evening she shrank and vanished as the lamps were lit. Chaya was tired of disappearing. "I spend my whole life chasing light," she whispered to the pigeons who nested in the statue's folded hands. "Yet the moment I almost touch it, I cease to exist." The pigeons cooed sympathetically, but had no answer. Pigeons understand bread better than metaphysics. One summer, the city decided to keep the square illuminated all night for a festival that lasted 100 days. Torches, oil lamps, and colored lanterns burned without cease. For the first time in centuries, Chaya did not vanish at dusk. She stayed, solid and dark, dancing across the stones while musicians played and children ran through her cool body laughing. Chaya was happier than any shadow has a right to be. When the festival ended and the lamps were finally extinguished, Chaya panicked. She clung to the base of the statue, trying to remain, but darkness has its own laws. As the moon set, she began to fade. That was the night an old blind woman named Damadina came to pay respects. She walked with a cane, tapping the stones, feeling her way to the statue she had never seen with eyes. When her foot touched the trembling edge of Chaya, she stopped. "Who is crying here?" she asked softly. Chaya, startled that anyone could hear a shadow cry, answered in a voice like wind through dry leaves. I am the shadow of this statue. For 100 nights I was allowed to stay in the light, and now I must disappear again. I have tasted being real. I do not want to go back to being nothing. The blind woman sat down right inside Chaya's darkness, so that for a moment the shadow wore her like a cloak. Little sister, she said, you have it backwards. Light does not make you real. You make the light visible. Without you, light is only blinding. Without darkness to rest in, eyes forget how to see mercy. Chaya listened, trembling. Every morning, the woman continued, when the sun rises and you stretch across the square, people step over you carefully so they will not hurt the compassionate one's shadow. Old men sit in your coolness to drink tea. Children draw hearts on your surface with their fingers. You have been real every single day, only you were looking in the wrong direction for proof. As the first hint of dawn touched the eastern sky, Chaya felt herself lengthening again, growing solid and defined. But this time she did not chase the light. She rested inside it, the way breath rests inside the body. The blind woman stood, tapped her cane once, and walked away smiling. From that morning on, whenever the festival lanterns were lit again, people noticed something strange. The shadow of the great statue no longer tried to cling to the light. Instead, it lay calmly across the stones, open and welcoming, as though it finally understood that being stepped through gently is another way of being held. And on the longest night of the year, when the moon is hidden and the square is darkest, those who walk there say they can still feel a cool, tender presence underfoot, the shadow resting happily in its own darkness, dreaming of tomorrow's light without fear. 19. The boat that carried only one passenger. On the banks of the great river Ganges, in the season when the water turns the color of moonlit milk, there worked a ferryman named Bharadvaja. His boat was old, patched with palm leaves and prayers, and every day he carried people across. Merchants with heavy purses, pilgrims with empty bowls, lovers running toward or away from each other, soldiers returning from wars they no longer believed in. Bharadvaja never asked questions. He only named his price, one small coin, or one sincere smile, whichever the passenger could afford, and rowed with slow, steady strokes that felt like the heartbeat of the river itself. One dusk, when the sky was the color of a healing bruise, a single passenger waited on the bank. She wore a plain white sari, no jewelry, no bundle, only a quiet sorrow that made the air around her feel heavier. Bharadvaja bowed. "Where to, lady?" She pointed across the river to the far shore, where the cremation grounds glowed faintly with funeral fires. "I am going there," she said, "to the place where nothing returns." Bharadvaja felt the weight of her words settle in his chest, but he only nodded and helped her into the boat. They moved out onto the water. The current was gentle that night, almost tender. Halfway across, the woman spoke again, so softly he almost missed it. "Ferryman, do you ever carry the dead?" Bharadvaja rested his oars for a moment and looked at her. The moon had risen behind her head like a pale lotus. "Every crossing is carrying the dead," he answered. "Some know it, some do not. The child leaving its mother's womb is dead to the womb. The bride stepping over the threshold is dead to her childhood. The old man breathing his last is dead to pain. We are all corpses learning how to swim to the next shore." The woman's eyes filled, but she did not look away. "Then why," she whispered, "do we cling so hard to the boat?" Bharadvaja smiled the small, tired smile of someone who has asked that question 10,000 times. and still has no better answer than silence. He dipped one oar and turned the boat in a slow circle, so that they drifted, motionless, in the middle of the river. "Look down," he said. She leaned over the edge. In the black water she saw not her reflection, but every face she had ever loved. Her husband who died last monsoon, her daughter taken by fever, her own young self laughing on this very bank many lifetimes ago. They floated beneath the surface, peaceful, smiling, waving gently as if to say, "We never left." The woman began to weep, but the tears fell upward into the sky instead of down, becoming tiny stars that joined the ones already there. Bharadvaja waited until her shoulders stopped shaking. Then he spoke once more, so softly the river itself leaned in to hear. "Lady, the boat is not what carries you. You are what carries the boat. When you are ready to lay the oars down, the far shore will come to you." He did not row again. He simply sat, hands resting on his knees, while the old boat drifted by itself toward the glowing bank. When they touched the cremation ground, the woman stepped out without looking back. Bharadvaja watched her walk between the fires until her white sari became part of the smoke and light. He never saw her again, yet every night after that, when he ferried passengers across, someone would notice an extra space in the boat, an empty seat that felt warmer than the others, as though a quiet woman still sat there smiling, already home. And on the darkest nights, when the river is wide and the current strong, travelers say the boat rows itself, guided by invisible hands that know exactly where every sorrow needs to be laid down. In the deepest night of the year, when even the moon had turned its face away, a small grey moth named Deepika fluttered through the forest searching for light. She had been born that same evening and had only one night to live. All moths know this, yet they still fly toward whatever burns brightest. She passed many false lights, glowworms pretending to be stars, fireflies blinking love messages, the distant orange eyes of a village. None were enough. Her wings beat with the single longing every moth carries, to merge with light so completely that she would never be separate again. At the heart of the forest, she found a tiny clay lamp burning on a stone altar. An old monk sat beside it, eyes closed, palms open on his knees. The flame was no larger than a tear, yet it burned steady and clear, the color of sunrise remembering itself. Deepika circled once, twice, then flew straight into the flame. But she did not burn. Instead, something impossible happened. The flame grew larger, softer, and took the shape of a moth made entirely of golden fire. Wings of living light unfurled where her grey wings had been. She hovered above the wick, astonished, whole, luminous. The old monk opened his eyes and smiled without surprise. "Welcome home, little sister," he whispered. Deepika fluttered closer, no longer afraid. "I thought I would die," she said, and her voice was the soft crackle of a happy fire. "You did," the monk answered, "and in dying perfectly, you became what you loved. This is the secret humans spend lifetimes trying to learn." He lifted the lamp carefully and carried it through the dark forest. Wherever the moth flame flew above the wick, darkness opened like silk. Sleeping animals woke and felt peace they could not name. Trees straightened their tired branches. Lost travelers suddenly knew which way was home. By dawn, the lamp had become unnecessary. The moth flame rose gently from the wick, grew until she was large enough to light the entire valley, and settled into the sky as the morning star. The old monk bowed to the place where she had been. That night, And every night after, when children in the village looked up and saw the brightest star hanging low and golden, their grandmothers would say, "That is Deepika, the moth who loved light so completely she became the first light of morning. If you are ever lost in darkness, whisper her name. She will remember how it feels to search, and she will guide you." And sometimes, on the windless nights just before dawn, a faint warmth brushes the cheek of anyone who has forgotten how to hope. The soft wing beat of a moth made of fire passing overhead, looking for the next heart brave enough to fly straight into what it loves. Long, long before the idea of long ago had even been dreamed, there was only a vast velvet darkness, softer than the inside of a lotus that has not yet decided to open, warmer than the space between a mother's arms and the child who has not yet been born. In this darkness there was no time, no light, no sound, only one slow, endless breathing that belonged to no one and to everything at once. Inhale, the whole of existence gathering itself like a quiet tide. Exhale, the whole of existence letting itself go again, the way a tired bird finally releases the sky and trusts the branch. For countless aeons this breathing continued, perfect, complete, without beginning or end. But one day, if the word day can be used for something that had never seen light, a tiny ripple appeared in the breathing. It was so small that 10,000 galaxies could have been born and died inside it without anyone noticing. It was the first thought that had ever thought itself. The thought was very gentle. It said simply, "I wonder what would happen if I opened my eyes." And because the darkness was kind, because the darkness had never known cruelty, it did not scold the thought. It only smiled the way night smiles at the first star that dares to appear, and it answered, "Try." So the thought opened its eyes, and in that instant, the first faint shimmer of light was born. Not bright, not blinding, just the softest glow, the color of warm milk left on a windowsill for a sleeping child. The light looked around and saw nothing but itself reflected everywhere. It was both the seer and the seen, the lover and the beloved, the question and the answer. It felt a little lonely, the way even the moon sometimes feels lonely when it is full and has no one to be full for. So the light did what all lonely things do. It divided itself. One part stayed still, quiet, watching, the way the Buddha would one day sit beneath the Bodhi tree. The other part began to move, to dance, to play hide and seek with itself across the vast darkness. And wherever it danced, worlds were born. First came faint clouds of stardust, swirling slowly, like incense smoke in an empty temple. Then came fire, gentle at first, the color of candlelight seen through tears. Then came water, cool and clear, flowing without hurry, the way thoughts flow when the mind has stopped grasping. Then came wind, soft as the breath of a sleeping monk. And last came earth, solid enough to stand on, soft enough to grow things. All of this happened in the space of one slow exhale. The moving light laughed with delight, because now there were mountains to climb, rivers to cross, forests to walk through barefoot. But the still light, the part that had never moved, watched quietly and felt something new, tenderness. It saw that every being born from the dance, every deer, every child, every blade of grass, would one day grow tired. It saw that all things, no matter how bright, eventually long to rest. So the still light whispered across the newborn universes, a whisper so soft that it took 1 billion years to reach the first ear that could hear it. When you are weary, come home. There is a place inside you that has never left me. And because the moving light loved the still light more than anything, it agreed. Together, they made a promise, the first and only promise the universe has ever needed. Every night, no matter how far you have wandered, no matter how many names you have worn, how many hearts you have broken or been broken by, you may stop dancing. You may lay every shining thing down. You may remember that before you were a mother, a father, a king, a beggar, a star, a tear, you were only this breathing. Inhale. Gather the whole day like a child gathering flowers. Exhale. Lay the flowers gently at the feet of the night. The moving light became the moon. The still light became the dark behind the moon. And together, they taught every living thing the ancient art of falling asleep. They taught the mountains to settle into themselves at twilight, the rivers to slow their singing when the stars appear, the tigers to curl their great paws beneath their chests and dream of deer that do not run, the smallest insects to fold their wings like tiny monks folding their robes after evening meditation. And when the first humans appeared, walking upright beneath a sky full of new questions, the moon and the dark behind the moon taught them too. They taught Siddhartha beneath the Bodhi tree, taught him that awakening is not the opposite of sleep, but its deepest form. They taught him that to wake up completely is to become so transparent that sleep and waking are only two slow breaths of the same endless kindness. They taught him the four noble truths the way a mother teaches a child to lie down. First, yes, life is restless. The heart runs and runs after flickering lights. This is natural. This is not a mistake. Second, the running has a cause, a tiny forgetting, a sweet, innocent forgetting that we were never separate from the stillness we seek. Third, the running can gently, gently stop, the way a deer stops running when it realizes the tiger was only its own shadow. Fourth, there is a path of stopping made of 8 soft footsteps. Right view like moonlight, right intention like warm water, right speech like the hush after a bell, right action like laying a tired child down, right livelihood like breathing without forcing, right effort like a river that knows it will reach the sea, right mindfulness like remembering you are already home, right concentration like the moment just before sleep, when the mind finally smiles and lets go. The Buddha understood. He lay down beneath the tree that night, not to escape the world, but to marry it completely. He slept the sleep of one who has remembered everything and therefore has nothing left to hold. From that night on, every being who truly sleeps in him, and he sleeps in them. The murderer sleeps, and for a few hours the knife forgets its name. The grieving mother sleeps, and the child she lost comes back as the rhythm of her own heart. The soldier sleeps, and the battlefield becomes a meadow where he once flew kites as a boy. Even the stars, those ancient dancers, slow their turning just a little when a single human closes their eyes in trust. This is the great secret the universe has been keeping since before it had a name. Falling asleep is not the opposite of being awake. It is the deepest practice of awakening. It is the moment the moving light comes home to the still light and remembers they were never two. So now, little one, great one, tired one, ancient one wearing a temporary body, lie down. Let the day unclasp its fingers from your shoulders. Let every name you answered to today drift away like boats unmoored at twilight. Let the moon, who has watched over every Buddha, every child, every broken heart that finally rested, watch over you now. Inhale. Receive the whole weary world, like a mother receiving her crying child. Exhale. Release the world the way a child releases a fistful of sand and discovers the beach is still there. There is nothing to guard tonight. No thought is dangerous in the dark. No sorrow is too heavy for the great softness that is holding you. The same darkness that once gave birth to galaxies is the same darkness now cradling your small, precious form. It has never left you. It never will. Before the first mountain had learned how to stand, before the first star had decided to shine, there was only water. Not the water you know, small, contained in cups and rivers and tears, but one single, endless, mirror-calm ocean that had no shore, no surface, no bottom, no name. This ocean was perfectly awake and perfectly asleep at the same time. It dreamed without dreaming. It rested without needing rest. It breathed without lungs. For countless kalpas, it simply was. Then, one day, though days had not yet been invented, a tiny ripple appeared on the ocean's heart. It was smaller than the space between two thoughts. It was the first forgetting. The ripple said, "I wonder what it would be like to be something other than everything." The great ocean, being kind and curious, allowed the ripple to play, and so the ripple became a wave. The wave rose, curved, crested, and looked around. It saw only itself, endless water in every direction, and felt a sweet, strange ache. "I am beautiful," the wave thought, "but I am alone." So the wave called to wave, and suddenly there were 10,000 waves, 1,000,000 waves, waves dancing, crashing, racing one another across the skin of the ocean. They played for aeons. Some grew tall and proud, some stayed small and shy, some carried ships, some swallowed cities, some only kissed the toes of sleeping children on distant beaches. Each wave believed it was separate, born at one moment, destined to die when it reached the shore. They suffered beautifully. They loved fiercely. They feared the sand the way all living things fear endings. And the great ocean beneath them watched with infinite tenderness, never angry, never hurried, only waiting. One evening, the first real evening that ever was, a single wave grew very tired. She had traveled farther than any wave before her. She had carried merchants and monks, whales and paper boats, lovers' letters and drowned soldiers' helmets. She had seen every color the sky could invent. She had broken herself against every kind of cliff. Now she was thin, almost transparent, barely able to lift her crest. She looked ahead and saw the shore approaching. Golden sand, children building castles, an old woman burning incense for the dead. The wave felt terror rise in her watery heart. "I'm going to die," she whispered. "All my journeys, all my stories, all my shining will be lost." She tried to turn back, to retreat into the safety of the deep, but the current of all the waves behind her pushed her gently, inexorably toward the beach. Closer, closer. Just as her crest began to curl and fall, something extraordinary happened. A small child on the shore, a little girl with sun-browned feet and eyes older than mountains, walked into the shallows and spoke directly to the wave. "Don't be afraid," the child said. "I know who you really are." The wave trembled. "I have seen you in my dreams," the child continued. "You are not a wave. You are the entire ocean pretending to be a wave so it can know what it feels like to touch a shore." The wave wanted to argue, but she was too tired. She simply let go. And in that letting go, she broke, not into nothing, but into everything. She spread across the sand, soaked into tiny shells, rose again as mist, became the laughter of the child as the water tickled her ankles. She was in the tears of the old woman burning incense, in the wings of the gull overhead, in the coolness under the child's bare feet. She was nowhere and everywhere, And in that moment she remembered, I never left the ocean. I only dreamed I was a wave so the ocean could know the joy of returning. The great ocean felt the waves remembering and smiled the way only water can smile, a smile that has no edges. From that day forward, every wave that approached any shore carried a secret message whispered from wave to wave across all the seas of all the worlds. When you feel small, when you feel separate, when you are terrified of breaking, remember the child on the shore. Remember the old woman. Remember the gull. You are not coming to an end. You are coming home in the only way home can happen, by dissolving so completely that nothing is lost and everything is gained. The message traveled for millions of years. It reached the mighty Ganges as she thundered down from the Himalayas, young and wild, believing she must fight every rock on her way to the sea. A quiet monk named Shariputra sat on her bank one dawn and spoke to her the way the child had spoken to the wave. "Great river," he said, "why do you struggle so?" The river roared, "I must reach the ocean. I was born for the ocean." Shariputra smiled and dipped his wooden bowl into her current. He lifted it, full of rushing water, and held it up to the rising sun. "Look," he said. The river saw herself in the bowl, wild, beautiful, complete. Then Shariputra tilted the bowl and let the water fall back. The river felt herself return without having gone anywhere, not smaller, but boundless. She quieted. From that day, the Ganges flowed differently. Still powerful, still carrying whole forests and villages in her arms when the monsoon commanded. But underneath the roaring, there was a deep stillness that monks could hear when they pressed their ears to her surface at midnight. She became the river that teaches all rivers. You do not need to reach the ocean. You only need to remember you never left it. The message kept traveling. It reached a snowflake falling gently over a Tibetan monastery, where an old lama sat dying. The snowflake landed on his open palm and began to melt. The lama looked at the tiny drop and laughed the soft laugh of someone who has just understood a lifelong joke. "So this is how it happens," he said. "We spend our whole lives trying to stay solid, and the path is simply to melt." He closed his eyes closed, and the snowflake became mist, became breath, became sky. The message reached a single tear rolling down the cheek of a young mother whose child had just taken his first step and then fallen. She tasted salt and suddenly remembered every tear she had ever cried was still her, still the ocean, only wearing the costume of sorrow so love could be born. She lifted the child, pressed him to her wet cheek, and both of them laughed through the tears the way the sea laughs through storms. The message reached the very last star in the very last galaxy that was burning itself out after 14 billion years. The star felt its fuel running low and panic flickered in its core. Then it heard the whisper, "You are not dying. You are remembering." And the star let go. It did not explode in violence. It simply softened, spread, became nebula, became nursery for new stars that would one day forget and then remember again. The message reached you. Yes, you reading this now, with tired eyes and a heart that has carried too many names today. Listen, you are the wave that has traveled farther than you can measure. You are the river that has carved canyons with your longing. You are the snowflake that believed it had to stay frozen forever. You are the tear that thought it fell alone. You are the star that was afraid of going dark. But underneath every costume, every story, every sorrow and joy you have ever worn, you are the great ocean practicing the ancient art of pretending to be many so it can know the joy of becoming one again. So now, beloved wave, beloved river, beloved drop, beloved star, Lie down. Let the day dissolve the way salt dissolves in water, completely, sweetly, without remainder. Let every plan, every worry, every identity you polish so carefully slip from your fingers like wet sand. There is nothing to hold tonight. There never was. The ocean is breathing you. Inhale. Receive the whole tired cosmos into your chest. Exhale. Return the cosmos to itself. Lighter by one smile. The moon is your older sister, who has never once failed to return. The darkness is your mother, who has never once stopped holding you. The silence between heartbeats is the Buddha smiling because you finally stopped running. Sleep. Sleep so deeply that even your dreams forget they are dreams and become the ocean dreaming it is you. In a valley where winter stayed 9 months of the year, there was a tiny monastery carved into the side of a cliff. Only 7 monks lived there, and the youngest was named Jampa. His only duty was to keep the butter lamp burning in the shrine room from dusk until dawn. 1 lamp, 1 flame, all night. Every evening Jampa trimmed the wick, filled the bowl with fragrant butter, and lit the lamp with a pine splinter. Then he sat beside it, straight-backed, eyes half closed, guarding the flame the way a mother guards a sleeping child. One winter, the storms were fiercer than anyone could remember. Snow blocked the passes. Yaks froze standing up. The monastery ran out of butter, then out of oil, then out of everything that burns. On the longest night of the year, the last spoonful of butter was gone. The lamp flickered, shrank to a red thread, and died. Jampa sat in the sudden darkness and felt shame rise like cold water inside his chest. He had failed. The Buddha's eyes in the shrine statue were now blind. The valley had no light. He pressed his forehead to the cold stone floor and whispered, "Forgive me. I have nothing left to give." Then he did something no one expected. He took the empty brass lamp, placed it in the center of the shrine, and sat in front of it exactly as he had every night. He closed his eyes and began to breathe with the slow, steady rhythm he had learned from years of watching the flame. Inhale. 4 heartbeats. Hold. 4 heartbeats. Exhale. 8 heartbeats. Hold empty. 4 heartbeats. He breathed as if the air itself were butter, as if his lungs were the wick, as if his heart were the offering. Minutes passed. Hours passed. The other monks woke for midnight practice and found Jampa still sitting, perfectly still, perfectly radiant in the pitch dark. And in the brass bowl, where no butter remained, a soft golden light appeared. It was not bright. It was the color of warm milk seen through half-closed eyelids. It grew steadily until the entire shrine room glowed, until the Buddha's stone face shone with the gentlest smile anyone had ever seen. The light had no source. It simply was. The oldest monk, who had not cried in 60 years, felt tears freeze on his cheeks. He understood. The boy had become the lamp. From that night on, the monastery never needed butter again. Travelers climbing the icy path at midnight would see a faint golden glow spilling from the cliff like honey, guiding them through blizzards that swallowed every other light. And on the coldest nights, when the wind howled like 1,000 hungry ghosts, the monks would sit in a circle around Jampa and breathe with him. The light would rise and fall with their shared breath, never too bright, never too dim, always exactly enough. Years later, when Jampa's body grew old and lay down for the last time, the light did not leave. It simply spread until the entire valley shone softly from within, the way a mother's love shines long after she has gone to sleep. People began to call the valley the place where darkness learned to burn. They said that if you sit very quietly there on a winter night, you can still see a young monk breathing in an empty shrine room. and you will remember that the truest lamp is the one that needs no fuel, except willingness to stay awake for the sake of those who are still afraid of the dark. In the ancient city of Varanasi, where the Ganges flows north to meet the dawn, there lived a beggar named Sundara. He had no home, no family, no bowl, no name anyone remembered. He slept under whatever tree was kind that night, and he smiled at everyone the way the river smiles at the sun. Every morning he walked the ghats with empty hands held open like two small boats. People gave him half a chapati, a bruised banana, a coin black with many pockets. He accepted everything with the same soft dhanyavad, then gave half of whatever he received to the next beggar he met. At dusk, he would sit on the highest step above the river, watching the cremation fires reflect in the water like fallen constellations. He never looked sad. He looked as if he had a secret too large to fit inside sorrow. One evening, a rich merchant, heavy with gold and worry, stopped in front of him. The merchant's wife had just died. His warehouses were full, but his heart was empty. "Old man," the merchant said, "you have nothing, yet you smile. I have everything, yet I cannot sleep. Teach me your secret." Sundara looked at the merchant for a long time, the way the sky looks at a cloud that believes it is separate. Then he stood, took the merchant's hand, and led him down to the water's edge. The moon had risen, full and low, resting its silver chin on the river. "Tell me," Sundara whispered, "whose moon is this?" The merchant frowned. "It belongs to no one. It is just the moon." Sundara smiled wider. "Exactly. And yet it is entirely yours tonight. You do not need to buy it, guard it, or fear someone will steal it. It simply gives itself to every open eye." He pointed to the reflection trembling on the water. "Now watch." A boat passed. The reflection shattered into 1,000 silver fish. The merchant's heart clenched, but Sundara only laughed softly. "See? Even when it breaks, nothing is lost. The moon is still whole above us. The pieces are only dancing." The merchant watched the fragments slowly gather again into one perfect circle. Something inside his chest loosened, like a fist that had been holding water for 40 years. Sundara continued, voice soft as the river's skin. "All day you count coins, houses, reputations, things that can be lost. I count nothing, so I lose nothing. My wealth is whatever the moment offers. The smell of jasmine on this breeze, the sound of a child laughing behind me, the cool step under my bare feet, the moon that keeps coming back no matter how many times it is broken." He placed his empty palms on the merchant's chest. "This heart you guard so fiercely, it is not a warehouse, it is a window. Open it, and the whole sky moves in." The merchant began to cry, not from grief, but from the sudden lightness of having nothing left to protect. That night he went home, opened every door and window of his mansion, and slept more deeply than he had since childhood. In the morning, he found Sundara asleep under a neem tree, smiling in his dreams. The merchant quietly left his entire fortune at the beggar's feet, wrapped in saffron cloth. When Sundara woke, he laughed the way morning laughs at dew. He divided the gold among every beggar, widow, and stray dog in Varanasi, keeping only one small coin. With that coin, he bought a handful of marigolds and floated them on the river at sunset, watching them carry his thanks to the sea. From that day on, whenever anyone in the city felt poor, they would go sit beside Sundara on the ghats. He never gave them advice. He only pointed to whatever was freely given in that moment: the breeze, the light on the water, the cry of a kite overhead, and asked, Whose is this? And slowly, slowly, people began to remember that the richest person is the one who has stopped counting. Here are 4 more long, slow Buddhist bedtime stories, each one designed to carry you gently into sleep. Read them one by one, or let them wash over you all at once. There is no rush. Night is patient. 1. Good night, good night, good night. The old woman is sweeping the moon clean for you. The rice is filling every empty place inside you. The mountain has bowed so you can walk gently. The butterfly is resting on your heart. The Buddha is breathing you home. Sleep, sleep, sleep. You are already there.